Hello, and welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunnigan.
We're coming back to you with our ever classic, probably the thing that's ran longer than anything else in the podcast, but our summary of the year of our favorite flicks, this year being 2022. And it's a very interesting year. There's quite a bit of movies, but then there also is not as many movies too at certain locations too. Plus, then you also have the travesty of trying to find certain movies because they get landlocked to certain streaming things or so on, which really gives a lot of movies no press, in my opinion. I mean, I don't watch TV anymore, so I don't see commercials. And if it's something like YouTube, I pay to get rid of the ads, so that might block me from a handful of places that might have led me into it. But there's many movies that were just like on something that's like, and it's like, well, where the heck, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to mention this one movie because I'm going to say it wasn't on my top 10 list, but it was like a good close runner up. But it was the Weird Al movie Weird. You had to watch that on the Roku thing. You know what I mean?
Fucking
like,
Roku? Roku.
It's not even like a normal place to go watch stuff. Now, granted, I'm going to say this, probably about 1/3 of people are probably watching their stuff on Roku because I feel Roku and Amazon are the two biggest streaming sticks out there, or whatever you want to call those things. You know, if you're not watching on your PlayStation, Xbox, or, you know, something like that. But it's like, now granted, I was able to watch it on there for free. I didn't have to subscribe to anything, so it kind of worked out. But it was just one of those ones like, oh, I thought it was like, man, this, you know, it's one of those ones. If I didn't know this movie was coming out, how the hell would you ever run across this?
I'm just waiting for some like, dude, there's an Elliott Smith biopic coming out. Oh, really? There's an Elliott Smith biopic coming out? Yeah, Ricky, watch it. Voodoo. Like, oh, well, I mean, shit. I guess that's not happening anytime soon.
I mean, Voodoo, technically, that's where I type in all my digital codes, though, when I get a new DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, but it's not the thing you think of when you're like, oh, stream. I don't know. I'm just waiting for them to just, oh, that does streaming? Just something you wouldn't expect. You know what I mean? Or just like, oh, it's on CNN Plus or whatever. I don't know. That shit fell through. But yeah, there's like a good handful of movies that I wanted to see that either A, I didn't have the time to see, unfortunately. B, given where I'm at, they just weren't released over here, or at least in a way that made it easy to see them. Or C, just subtitles. And when you're in another country, usually I'm like, I don't mind a movie with subtitles, but when you're in another country and the subtitles are in Dutch, then it's a whole other lesson. You know, it's a whole other deal. So
yep.
I have now, and I'll be honest, a lot of the movies, my list, I could have probably made a list of 15 movies, but we've done that before, and it took like 3 hours. So
yeah, exactly. That's the same thing we've learned about when people say like, hey, I want to come on and join you on your top 10 thing. It's like, I hate to say it, there's just not enough time in the day for that.
I want to, yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm running on like 4 hours of sleep, and I got up at 4:30 this morning, and it's like 9:30 here right now. So I already had a few drinks. And sometimes you get that gust second wind. Shit's gonna get weird. I know shit's gonna get weird. I just know it's gonna happen. But you know, we're here and we'll get it going. I just want to say, I think this year was a really good year for movies, and I found myself looking at my list, and it wasn't even so much of like, oh, I kind of like this movie just a little bit more. It was more of like, well, Spencer's probably going to talk about that, so let me make room for this movie right here. Where I know there's like, I really probably could have had a list of like 15 or 17 movies that I really would have loved to talk about. But I'm like, I know you're probably going to talk about them, and we both probably saw a movie. I know we both saw movies the other didn't see. So, yeah. You know, yeah.
Well, that's what I kind of did. I looked at my list because I did that thing this year. I wrote down every movie I watched, even if like I didn't really. Maybe it was like, I don't know. I just wrote them down anyways. If I watched it, I wrote it down just so at the end of the year I wouldn't forget, you know, because that's sometimes always a downfall is, you know, you go a year long and you go, oh shit, I forgot that movie came out this year, you know, and going through the list and so on like that, you know, it was that one where I sort of chopped it off and then kind of went with, this the list I can live with this one at the moment. You know, it always changes, and there'll probably be some hidden gem we missed or something like that. But well, let's get us all.
I was going to say, there's always that movie, whether you missed it that year or whether like you, I mean, I did a pretty good job of keeping up with my list too, like you, but I think there's always that movie. Like, oh, fuck, that came out this year. And I forgot to talk about that. That's what it would have been on the list. Just got by me because a lot happened this year. So like a lot of things like, oh, this was the same year. Jesus, you know?
Yeah, well, I always call that's the Hell or High Water thing, because that was a movie we both missed one year, and then we watched it again. I'm like, dude, that movie would have been at least in my top three, if not maybe even like two or one.
Yeah, same here.
So there's always that. But to get us going, let's start off. I'll let you start with big old number 10.
Well, my number 10, and I'll say why it's starting at 10 instead of being higher, but I still really liked it. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Oh, so you know what? This one, you told me about this when it came out. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or we just talked about it on the phone or something like that. And I was like, this sounds super interesting. I'm like, I really like to see this. And then like just blanked out, and I just never went back to go watch it. But then once again, this was one of those ones that was on Netflix, right?
Yeah, it's on Netflix, and I think sometimes if it's a streaming exclusive movie, it could easily get by you, because there's so many things constantly coming out. Yeah, well, this one, it was pretty good. Now the thing is, because this was a year, like I've never been one of those people. Like there's that weird thing of like stigmata thought, where people think of things around the same time, and like how a bunch of Pinocchio shit came out in the same year. There was like the bad Pauly Shore Pinocchio movie.
Wait, there was a Pauly Shore Pinocchio movie? Where was I?
like a poorly made Russian animated one, and then Pauly Shore voiced Pinocchio, and it's by this point like a internet meme where he's like very 90s Polly, but father, when can I go out on my own? Like just like people would just like clip that thing.
I've never seen any of this. I feel like I've been missing out. This seems like something I would watch. I'm not saying it's gonna be good, but it just sounds like something I would watch.
No, it was lambasted as one of the worst movies of the year, but people were.
That means I'll probably love it.
Yeah, that's people. Well, I don't know. Even you have your limits. I think you might just like the Pauly Shoreness, but
that's probably true.
It was like a CG. This is not my movie. I'm just want the other. A bunch of Pinocchio shit came out. This is not the one I picked. But there is like a bad CG. I think it was a Russian-made Pinocchio movie, and they did the thing where like, well, who are we gonna get? Let's get a celebrity like Pauly Shore. Is it 1992? No, but let's get him anyway. Okay.
It is in Russia.
Yeah. So it's one of those things like we just saw Son-in-Law, great movie.
Encino Man on VHS just came on over. A very good movie. Yeah. Biodome, the best.
Exactly.
Jury Duty, not so good. We're not big fans of Jury.
So it's one of those things. Got our limits too.
The Jury downfall of Eastern civilization. Things are much better when Jury was not here. Decisions made an instant. No one to convince. But they got really hung up on that Pauly Shore Jury Duty movie. That like affected them real well. I don't think anybody in America was questioning any of this stuff.
Yeah. So there's that one, and there's I never even watched it. There is the Disney remake that came straight to streaming. Yeah, Tom Hanks, Geppetto or whatever. This is a Guillermo del Toro one where he was, I believe he was one of the writers, and he was one of two directors. Another director was a veteran in stop motion animation, and I feel bad, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But they worked together, and they basically retold Pinocchio in like a kind of like starts in the 1920s and almost kind of like Astro Boy in a way, where Geppetto has a kid and the kid dies in the first Great War, and then he's like that. Everyone loves Geppetto. He's like he's a model citizen, and he just becomes like an alcoholic, and he's just depressed, and your heart fucking breaks for him. And then in one night in a drunken rage, I think the fairy comes to him, and he makes Pinocchio out of spite. That's why Pinocchio looks kind of fucked up and only half finished. So there's things like that kind of go into play, and then it is like, I'm not sure if it's PG-13 in America, but it's like a very dark movie. And Pinocchio has this thing where he dies, but he comes back to life. But he goes to, every time he dies, he stays in the afterlife for just a little bit longer. A lot of designs there, like the blue fairy is almost like this like Lovecraftian like god thing with like these with these eyes kind of blinking on her horns and kind of like the Sphinx like body. Like there is some real shit that I think would creep kids out. And it kind of does more of a, and I said this on the episode where I first initially talked about it. It's a like when Pinocchio first comes in, you fucking hate him. But that's kind of accurate to how the original book is, from what I've read. I know I didn't read the original book, but just from looking into it, he was a little prick, and then he becomes a better person, and that's what happens in this. And it's actually a real morality tale about, and it doesn't follow it beat for beat. It doesn't it's not like a straight remake. It is a lot of reimagining. So it's not, you don't have kids turning into donkeys, but you have kids turning into fascists. So it's kind of, they have Mussolini comes in at some point. At some point, there's like a fascist voiced by Ron Perlman, who sees there's a boy that can't die. He's like, do you realize what this means? We can make him the ultimate soldier, so that becomes a plot point. So there's a lot of things happening in the movie, and the movie just looks beautiful. It's just a very amazing, stunning looking film. And the only reason it's not a little higher is I don't mind musicals, but I don't like the musical numbers in it. It has
musical numbers.
There's a couple of musical numbers. It's not like a nonstop musical, not like a Les Miserables where it's like 3 lines between songs. It's like, which I fucking hate. It's more like you go for a while, like kind of a Disney style musical. You'll go for a while, story, musical number, story, musical number. So, and there's even a couple parts. He's not called Jiminy Cricket, but the Jiminy Cricket character in this is voiced by Ewan McGregor. And there's 2 or 3 moments where he's trying to sing. He's like, but Pinocchio, you must not go. He's about to sing, or his song starts, just gets stepped on and just walks right through. So it's kind of like, it kind of fucks with expectation in that way. So I really liked it. This movie, I mean, I'm going to be honest, my like 10 through 6 or so could probably, kind of interchangeable, but I really liked it, and I recommend it. The only problem I had was just the musical numbers, and not like they're like, oh God, make it end. I just wasn't feeling them. But regardless, the rest of the movie was awesome.
Yeah, as I said, that one sounds like an interesting one. I totally spaced out on that movie, but that's just kind of what happens. As I said, it's Netflix, so I guess there's a higher chance of me not seeing it because it's on there. But it's weird. The easiest way to access something, and I always have the hardest time watching it. Like if it was in theaters, I probably would have saw it, but one of those.
It's worth it. I'd say check it out when you can, but it's like it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. But going up to my number 10, I'm gonna go with The Banshees of Inisherin.
That's one I wanted to see, and that wasn't playing here yet. How did you? Is that streaming in America right now?
I literally bought it. It came out on Blu-ray on December 10th or something like that here. So
yeah, it's going to come to theaters here for a few weeks, sometime with this month. So yeah, then that's the new Martin McDonagh movie, correct?
Exactly. So and I just, when I looked at the cover, I was just like, oh shit, it looks like in Bruges 2. It literally has got Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson in it, and they're just coming together for some other kind of probably wacky drama, filled with comedy and dark humor and all that kind of stuff. And that's sort of what this movie is. It's definitely a little bit heavier on the drama side than in Bruges and even the other previous movies. But it's just about 2 friends on this little island in Ireland during the Irish Civil War kind of era. So I think that's 1920s ish and whatnot. And one day Brendan Gleeson's just I don't want to be friends with you anymore. I hate you, Colin Farrell. And then Colin Farrell the whole time he's just oh, I don't get it. Why does he want to be friends with me? You know what I mean? We're the best bud. We always go to the pub every day and stuff. And then as it kind of goes on, he's just no, I just don't want to be friends. That's it. We're done. You know what I mean? I don't think I just don't think you're smart at all. My life's coming to the end. I want to do some intellectual shit, and I can't just hang out the pub with you every day. And he just cannot get it. And then he lives with fucking Colin Farrell lives with his sister, and his sister's almost telling him dude, you gotta stop going down the pub and bothering him. It's he just doesn't want to be friends with you. Just get over it. Find somebody else. Do something like that. But it's what we've always done. And as it goes on, it just gets kind of weirder and darker and so on like that. And it becomes this breaking mold. And the more darker it sort of gets, it's almost in a weird way. Brendan Gleeson starts coming back around, being well, I like him when he's dark and weird and so on like that. But I just don't like his normal behavior. He's just pissing me off. One of these things. He's just you're just a nice guy, and that's it. And nice is, no one's going to remember nice in 50 plus years, but they're going to remember if I make a cool music tune here on my fiddle or something like that, but I'll say as far as this Martin McDonagh movies go, it's probably my least favorite of all the ones I saw, but I still just liked it just enough that I felt like it's like, okay, it goes on the list because it's one of those movies, especially when I was done watching it, I did start thinking about it more and more like the next couple days and so on like that. And kind of like the deep dive it was sort of doing in this kind of just these two characters, very simple kind of like area and just the stuff kind of going on in it. And it's got that both. There's some really funny lines in there throughout. Then it just starts getting like, oh shit, where's this fucking going now? This is getting dark, and now it's got, but like you see kind of like what the artistic choices are going into it.
Well, I imagine I didn't see it, but just looking at the trailer for it, and I looked at a little behind the scenes thing of it. It looks kind of like him going more artsier than before. Because when you watch In Bruges is kind of artsy, but it's still like at the end of the day, like a crime comedy. It still stars Colin Farrell, and it just plus like you're an inanimate fucking object, or like what if you didn't have a gun with blanks? I guess he wouldn't have stitched you up like a gay little blonde boy, wouldn't he? Just like those kind of lines like that. But then you get to like Seven Psychopaths, which that one does seem a little bit more commercial. Like that seems like once you get a little bit more money and you go run off the. And I like In Bruges more, but I still really like Seven Psychopaths a lot.
That's my second favorite one.
Yeah, and then you get to, I guess it's almost kind of, I'm not saying the next one he has is going to suck, but I mean, the order they come out in is kind of like.
Literally the order they come out in is how I like them. Because my third favorite one is the next one you're coming to.
And then you get to like, three billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. And I still really liked that movie. The year that movie came out, it was probably my number 2 or my number 3 of the year. And I still really liked it, but that felt more of like it, that still felt kind of like an actor's movie. And he was still really heavy on the performances, and it was still funny. It still kind of had like, I still feel like you can call that movie a dark comedy, but it almost like had like more of it was more In Bruges, but almost leaned a little bit more drama in some aspects. Where this one, it sounds like it's kind of doing that, but it's almost going more like, I could get Woody Harrelson. I could go get Frances McDormand, who already got an Academy Award for something else, or, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the boys back and make a simple little movie on the island and make it chill. That's what it sounds like it was. And you're the one who saw it, so you'd have to tell me.
Yeah.
I got a vibe that this is him just wanting to make something more chill, just almost more for himself, and work with those actors again.
That's definitely how this one feels, because I will say the only thing is this one's kind of like, it's one of those ones where I don't feel like I'd go back and watch this one over and over. It's not like In Bruges or Seven Psychopaths, not saying I wouldn't watch it again. And of course I have it on Blu-ray, so I got the possibilities there, but it's one of those ones where, it still hits a little bit harder on like the darker and drama and kind of some interesting choices that kind of go into it and so on, but it still has that comedy in there. It's still fun. It's still an interesting story and just the ways everything kind of goes about it. And I think that's what made it. I felt like it was a perfect number 10 for my list. Like it was a good gateway into like where we're going from here. Cause I'm like, you know what? This one's a solid one. Starts the list off. I kind of was wondering, like, do I have this one on here or something like that? I'm like, no. I kind of like it because it has just that classic Martin McDonagh. You just don't get very many of his movies, really. For a guy who's been making movies for almost 20 years, like he only has really 4 of them in that one 20-minute short, which is still good too, that we watched, 8 years of podcasts ago.
It has almost been 20 years, hasn't it? Well, I guess he's been doing a lot of producing, and he was like a playwright for a while. So
yeah.
But still, Jesus, I guess it has almost been 20 years since In Bruges, because Jesus, don't remind me of that. But I really wanted to see that, and it looked different from the rest of his, but I still wanted to check it out. So I guess that anything else on that one, or?
No, that's probably good. If we go any longer, we'll just we slow down the train here, But
let's talk about how good In Bruges is and Seven Psychopaths.
Exactly, that's what I mean. I felt like it's just gonna fall into that. It's worth seeing it, but it's not for everybody. That's all I'm gonna really say. It's one of those kind of movies. Some people would watch. It's one of those ones you would sit down with some people and be like, "The fuck? That movie was so sad and dark and all that kind of stuff." I'm like, it's what a friend will go through to get his old buddy left, because when you're on an island like that, you can only relate to so many people,
Well, I guess that leads us to number 9, and my number 9 is God, I feel because you opened out with such an art house movie, and here I come in at number 9, going like, my number 9 is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
You know what? That's a good one right there. That was on my list of like getting close. Because I was like that movie, as far as like in that Marvel the next generation, whatever you want to call it after
Phase 4
Avengers kind of era. Yeah, it's like that one right there might be the top tier, I think, of all like the last handful that have come out. Like it's a solid action movie all the way through. My only complaint, I know when we talked about the podcast, was just it's a little bit too long, but everything else about it's great. And Namor fucking is totally dialed in. I like his new origin way more than I've ever liked him. You know, like it's a pretty sweet flick.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk too long about the movie just because we covered it only like a few episodes ago. But basically everything you just said. For me, I think it's probably my second favorite of Phase 4. My favorite Phase 4 movie is Spider-Man No Way Home, and then
actually, yeah, you're right. Never mind that one. I still, in my mind, I always think of those ones as slightly separate, even though I know they are because they're Sony movies, so they feel like they're just one point away, not in a bad way, but you know. But no, that one actually is the best one. But Black Panther's still pretty darn good.
Yeah. And as far as Phase 4 goes, I think Black Panther is like right up there with it. And I think it's one of those movies. A lot of great action. It had the emotional beats. It had two very hard things to do. You had to make a Black Panther movie without Chadwick Boseman, make it feel like it moved naturally without Chadwick Boseman. And then you also had maybe like Namor, and you managed to pull off both. Because as I said before, I hate Namor in the comics, but I really liked him in this movie. And the smartest thing they did was like, fuck him from the comics. We'll just make him something different. They made him a Mayan warrior, and that was way more badass. So we talked about it like a few weeks ago in a big, long conversation. But yeah, I just thought this was just a really fun movie. And it also did something – because we always like whenever a Marvel movie comes out, you can't help but talk about, well, what's the next step? What are they going to do now? There's a little bit of that. Like, okay, I mean, let's I don't want to go into spoilers too much here, but the mid-credits sequence, there's a little bit of like, okay, what are they going to do with that? But it's not to the level of like, oh, are they going to bring in this character now? Are they going to bring in that character? Are these two going to meet? Is this going to happen? It was just a movie that really stood out on its own. Yes, it is part of this bigger universe, but it was also this movie. It didn't make it feel like, oh, just another episode. It felt like a very personal movie. At the same time, it still had that big action spectacle. It met and worked on all those fronts. And it was just a really fun movie, and it was also very emotional, and I thought it had that right balance. So, yeah, Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever is my number 9.
Yeah, that's a good one there. Well, jumping into my number 9, I'm going to go with Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe.
That was a movie? I thought that was a show. That was a movie?
Yeah, there was a show that came out too, but they made a full-on movie that was almost like, in a sense, like a sequel to Beavis and Butthead Do America. It literally starts off in 1998, and it's kind of this thing where it's like, okay, here's Beavis and Butthead from back then, and they accidentally get thrown into a space program because they end up destroying like pretty much the science fair thing, because there's this thing where Butthead's it just sounds like, I love how I go from a very artsy with like, okay, I gotta go to this movie where, how does this movie start off? They're at a science fair. Butthead is kicking Beavis in the nuts over and over and over again to see like when he passes out. And then he finds this machine that someone has built for their science experiment. It says like the robot punt kicker for football. It's just a giant leg. And he's like, hey, Beavis, come stand over here. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll come stand there. He starts just cranking this thing up, just cranking it up. And Beavis has like no idea what's going to happen. And just finally Butthead releases it, just sends Beavis flying. He hits a bunch of stuff like in the ceiling, just burns the whole science fair down, just chaos ensues. And then they're just like in court, they're like, this is one of the few times that, you know what, it's not boys will be boys, we're going to do this. Since we can't tell who won the science fair competition, we're going to send you to the space camp because maybe that will fix you guys up. And so they go to space camp, and then they think that they're really great at the stuff there, so they decide to send them into space. Lo and behold, Beavis and Butthead end up like messing that whole journey up, and they go into this black hole and are sent to 2022. And that's where this story kind of is. So now they think they're like some mysterious alien form that came to Earth.
Oh, okay. I need to see this. Yeah, I didn't know about that. I knew that it was back. I didn't know it was a movie. I need to check that out now.
It's really funny. It's got some scenes in there that I just thought were fantastic, like just that classic Mike Judge humor, where you could have the mixed match of both having like the almost like the goofiest, most retarded humor, but then you also have very very intellectual humor all at the same time.
Like
And
King of
just
the
on a
Hill or
fun
Silicon Valley.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, just all the way through. I mean, like I went back and rewatched some scenes in it just because that's how much I liked it. Like literally the next day, there was just parts I'm like, dude, this part's just so funny. There's a scene in there where like they're at this university and they're walking through because they're supposed to be finding this portal because there's a smart Beavis and Butthead in another dimension that's trying to get them to connect so that the universe aligns again. But they get distracted. Well, they walk into like this like woman's feminist class or whatever, and they just kind of storm in and whatnot. And the teacher's there. She's just like, oh, okay, guys, take your seats. I mean, and they're just like, they have no idea what's going on. And she's like, okay, well, here's the thing. Did you read the books or anything like that? And like, no, we didn't read the book at all or anything like that. And she's like, well, you see here, your dad probably, bought you in here. He works on Wall Street. He could have me fired for all I care. And just you do whatever you want, but it just doesn't matter. I'm just here to point this out that here you go, folks. Here's a bunch of rich kids. And then like, as they say that, they're like, wait a second. You know my dad? Like, because, Beavis and Butthead never had parents or live parents really and stuff like that. And she's like, yes, I bet you he's rich and powerful. And that's why that's here. He's like, whoa, rich and powerful, And then she goes on this whole speech and kind of going like, see, this is what we call white privilege. You guys could just storm in, do whatever you want, and next thing you know, you'll have a job on Wall Street. And then they start going to the class, and they just have a bunch of these like very, very like modern kind of like hipstery girls, kind of pointing this out, and they start pointing out like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, you don't have to work hard. And then the black lady's like, and the cops won't bother you. Like, whoa, really? Like none of this stuff, And this part was like, there's a girl, she's all like, you know what, it's just that kind of thing when men, white men who think that they got this white privilege and so on, that they can just answer. And there's a guy, he stands up first like, Stacey, hold on a second, let me, yeah, when the white men can jump in and explain. I was laughing so hard, and then like once it's done, it cuts, and they were just walking through campus, and they just start taking shit, and just like, hey, don't worry, we got white privilege. Yeah, we didn't know about it either. Pretty cool, huh? So they just start stealing food and just taking stuff, and they go outside. And there's a cop car. And he's like, oh. And Bud's like, hey, you want to take that car? And he's like, it's a cop car. We got white privilege. The cops can't do anything to us. I don't know that part. Like, I'm like probably not even doing the scene like as justice as it is. It's like when I watch it, it's so hilarious. And there's just stuff like that in there. That was like, this is that kind of thing that, sometimes when there's sequels so much later in life, you always kind of wonder, like, especially Beavis and Butthead, because they're about as 90s as you could almost get. So you kind of go, how are they going to kind of work in this modern thing? And it's like, God, it still worked out just as good. I still thought that movie was hilarious. Just the stuff going in there, the primal humor, the intelligent humor, fantastic. But it's like, once again, you got to watch this on Paramount Plus. And only because I had Paramount Plus was I able to for a moment.
There's some kind of like, that's the thing. I don't want to go in a whole like streaming difference over here, but there's some things like HBO Max over here is worse. But Disney Plus over here is way better because it's like most of the stuff on Hulu, Disney Plus, and then random other shit. So I got to find out what Paramount Plus is over here, the equivalent to that. I think it's kind of merged with something else over here. But yeah, that I definitely want to check that one out. I didn't know that was a movie. I thought it was a show, but you said that the show came after the movie. So
yeah, I think there's a show that came along with it too, where it's kind of like modern Beavis and Butthead type stuff. But the movie is just a straight sequel to Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Typical thing of a man speaking over woman. 1 second, Stacey.
I don't know. It's because one of those ones, like in any other context, sometimes when there's those jokes where it's like, oh, it's just kind of pointing out the fun of the times, I kind of go, but that one was like so spot on and it so made sense. And just the idea of how Beavis and Butthead would take this and how she just, I don't know, just everything about it just was like pure gold in comedy.
I have to check that one out. So that one's your number 9?
That's my number 9.
My number 9 is a documentary called Tony Hawk Until the Wheels Come Off.
Oh God, this is one of those. I heard about this because Tony Hawk was like on a podcast with somebody or another, and I was like, oh, I gotta check this out, and then I just never got around to seeing it.
It's basically, it was a HBO Max exclusive documentary. And despite how much I'm complaining about HBO Max as a service, I still think they often have a lot of good documentaries and whatnot. And
Mhm.
this one was really good. And it's basically more or less his life story, starting off to where he is now, the ups and downs. And, I can say it beat for beat, but it is very interesting. Because, to us, Tony Hawk was just the dude from the awesome skate video game, and everybody had Tony Hawk skateboard or Tony Hawk shirt when we were growing up. So, and you overheard kids talk about it. And I remember being in middle school and hearing kids very split talking about him in such a way of like, oh, the only reason he got as far as he did is because his dad was running part of the league. Otherwise, he really sucks. And yet other people like, no, he was really good. And then, so kind of going back and forth. And Tony Hawk was like this young guy. He was a kid who just had like, he like, basically he analyzed and practiced, because everyone else was like, it's more of a feeling, man. It's more of just a groove, and then he was just, I'm not even doing it justice the way they said it, but that was kind of the attitude. But he was more of just very analytical, kept trying and almost doing it more of just kind of a tactic and more of just taking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, trying almost like Jeet Kune Do it. And then people like, hey man, that's some fucking lame ass shit, So, and you realize how much shit Tony Hawk was taking on at a young age. Like he was like, he was going like skating events, and he was like, when he was like 12 and being booed at by a bunch of guys in their 20s and all that, like get the fuck out, and just like this 12-year-old kid or like the 15-year-old kid just doing good, but then just getting like shit on the whole time. And at some point his dad did come in because his dad just wanted to push it. I think his dad like had something in business and he just wanted to help his son push forward. But at some point he's like, Dad, you gotta leave. He's like, why? You're just, he had fallen out with his dad because it was basically like his dad was putting the promotional stuff. Like, I don't get it. I want to help you out. Like, you don't get it, So
if there's a bunch of hooligans at school, let me go talk to them. That's the only way you could solve this, Tony. No, Dad, don't do that.
Well, he did have kind of a contentious relationship with his dad, but he still loved his dad. And I'll be honest, I watched the documentary on the plane over here, so I don't remember it as fluidly, but as well. But I remember it being really good. And there was one guy that was in the documentary who was just kind of like one of those guys who's like this, basically the same guy he was when he was 14. He's everything's like, let me tell you about, man, when I was skating, there wasn't none of this like fucking flippy fancy bullshit. You were just grinding, and he has like missing 3 of his front teeth or whatever. And then like, at some point, like when Tony Hawk's dad died, that guy said something like, oh, I bet he's real sad about his dad dying. And then like, just a little bit later, that dude's son actually died. And Tony Hawk pulled him aside like, all right, let me have it. Yeah, sure. Tell me a joke about my dead son. He's like, no, man, I want to know if you're doing okay. And he's like, and that's when it fucking got me. Like, oh my God, this, so like this guy, like half the time you're watching this, like this fucking asshole. And you see like that scene right there, like, that guy, like Tony was able to turn that around on that guy, so it really, it was very honest about him too. It didn't just make him seem perfect. It did come across, it did say like, yeah, I kind of became a workaholic. I was unfaithful to my wife. When we were doing the Tony Hawk video games that propelled me to superstardom, and I became more of a professional than I did a dad. Now I'm trying to fix that. And it kind of shows like this big, when he's trying to do the 900, when he's making the 900, it showed like this big, long thing of him just constantly falling and failing. Like the first 4 or 5, like almost like the first like 2 or 3 minutes of it is him just fucking up this trick until he's like, like throwing the board across the room because he just can't get this right. But It was just a very informative documentary, and I really liked it.
Yeah, no, that's one I'd like to check out. Now I have HBO Max once again, so I can take a look there. But that's just to me, like skateboarding is one of those ones. It's just that always takes me back to that time, especially when it's 90s skateboarding and like just that era. everything about it, I think, is one of those ones that's a very interesting topic. It's something that, like, I'm not going to get on a skateboard nowadays for sure. You know what I mean? Those days are very far away, but I am always interested in skateboarding, and I'm always like, just that kind of topic is such a cool one because it is just one of those ones. And, you know, Tony Hawk being the guy who always kind of was the baby face, I guess you would say, of skateboarding. He was always kind of looked like the, you know, in a sense, Mr. Clean compared to everybody else who just looked like they, you know, came straight out of like a grunge rock music video. You know, I think that was kind of the difference, but I've always liked Tony Hawk, and it's just one of those ones, that, you know, every podcast he's ever been on or something like that, he always just sounds like the coolest guy. So yeah, I look forward to that one.
Yeah, it was a really good one. And yeah, it's just, it was, there's something else I was going to say about it, but he comes across as a very just chill, natural guy, but they also keep on making, like, they drive the fact home that, like, if you keep doing this, eventually, like, you know, they're showing different skaters. Like, I can't bend my arm any further this way because I broke it this all the way around the other way, or I can't do this, or a doctor told me if I get hit in the particular part of this head, my head right here, I'm going to die, you know? So there's that kind of thing of just, and it's about him also coming to terms with, I can't go as hard as I used to. I can't do the 900 anymore, but I can still skate. I can still do this. I can still do that. So it was just really interesting. But yeah, that was my number. Is that 9?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was
my number. That was my 8. That was my 8.
Oh, okay, good. Okay,
Shit. I was like,
how long have we been stuck on here? Maybe we gotta speed it up a little bit. Okay.
Let me grab another beer. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those ones. But okay, so that's your 8. I'm kind of switching mine around here. I'm gonna go with my 8. Actually, no, I'm gonna go with this one here. I'm gonna do my 8 is I'm gonna go with Nope for number 8.
Nope. I really liked Nope. That one was good.
Yeah, that was one of those ones. I remember, like, it came out in the theaters, and the trailer, like all horror movies, I just feel horror movies, trailers do not do horror movies ever justice. They always look kind of stupid when you see them in, like, the trailer, you know. And I felt like it's one of those ones, like, I was like, I really liked Get Out, and then Us came out, and I was kind of disappointed in that. But then you talked about it last year or whatever it was, and that kind of made me go, okay, well, you made it sound better than I thought it was when I watched it, so maybe I gotta give that another go. And then it was just one of those ones, like, one of these days, I'm like, I'm just going to rent Nope, whatever. I'll see. I missed it in theaters, but that's okay. And I remember watching it, and this sounds weird. Like, the thing that stuck out to me more than anything else in that movie that I thought was, like, this could have been a movie in itself. I thought this was so cool, was all the chimpanzee stuff. The chimpanzee, I literally thought about that. I thought about that chimpanzee stuff for like 3 days after seeing the movie. Like, the rest of the movie just kind of went over my head. I was like, that chimpanzee stuff was so fucking cool, and that those buildups to those scenes there and everything about it, and all like the kind of like the horror elements of this like sitcom gone wrong. I thought that was so cool. I was one of those ones, like, you could almost get rid of the weird space manta ray alien thing and just have straight chimpanzee, and that would have been the movie in itself. You know, not saying the other stuff's not interesting too, but the chimpanzee stuff, I know I'm talking all about the chimpanzee stuff, but the chimpanzee birthday sitcom scene, so good. That is why it's on my list, is because of that.
Well, the thing with that is, because that part of the movie, what I really liked about that movie is, we can go on to, okay, it's a little bit of Jaws, a little bit of Close Encounters, okay. But what I really like about it is it's one of these movies, it's been coming out more, I mean, I guess if you look long enough, you could probably find it in genre and even back in Sergio Leone to some extent, but it's one of those movies, it's almost more of like a statement on film, but just not a genre, but on the film industry itself. And it's doing that thing about basically like kind of using your knowledge of cliches against you, but at the exact same time also saying, hey man, we're a movie. But, you know, even though we're part of this industry, want to know who gets overlooked a lot? Stuntmen, stunt people, animal handlers, animals, you know, there's all these, like, it shined a light on all this stuff, on all these people that are really overlooked when making film. And then on top of that, they also bring in the whole part where, like, just the thing, they could have said anything. Like, yeah, my dad was the first job I was going to come on was going to be Scorpion King. With the last minute, they switched out the horses for camels. And later, you see him, he's wearing a Scorpion King crew shirt or crew sweater, you know?
Yeah, so it's got like good comedy throughout it and so on. And just even, it's got Keith David in it, but sadly, Keith David's only in it for like a brief moment. But he does have his death is one of those ones where it's like, it's something I've always thought of as a kid is when like, what happens if you just drop a bunch of pennies out of the fucking air and they go land on people? Oh, it fucking just goes straight through them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that's true terrorism right there.
Well, well, that's also the other thing with that movie. And like, I won't talk about the whole thing now. But the thing about it is I thought it also worked because it's more or less, and I mean this in the best way, it's it's sort of a remake of Jaws. And you think about the way, not literally beat for beat, but the way they kind of get the thing, the way they're going after it. It's not just about, oh, it's an alien invasion thing. It's more about trying to capture or trying to get a good view of the thing. But then at the same time, things go an unexpected direction and things already seem kind of weird, but they go from being weird to being way more fucked up once you realize, because there's all the hints out there throughout the movie. And then once you realize what it's actually doing, what's actually happening, like, oh, that is so much more fucked up. That means that earlier when we heard, oh shit.
Yeah, it loops back around of so many of the stuff and so on. And there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on. It like almost those movies, I feel like it's more jam-packed with more ideas than there is even time to kind of like flesh them out. That was about like, I don't know if you say it's necessarily a complaint, but it's just one of those ones I feel like it's like the chimpanzee scene. Like that right there, I was like, that could almost be an entire movie in itself. And I'd be sold for like an hour and a half. But it's kind of the same thing with some of the other stuff there too, like the weird like theme park thing and so on like that, and feeding the people to the monsters. Like that in itself could almost be its own like, you know, kind of movie and so on there. Even just the stuntman horse wrangler part, like that could almost be its own movie in itself. You know what I mean? It's got like, there's a lot of stuff jammed together in this one movie. Not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but like I feel like there's so many things I felt could be almost more expanded on.
Well, the whole thing with it wasn't he wasn't trying to feed him to the monster, but what he was doing is either feeding the horses to it, and then it went unplanned. Like, oh, it's here sooner than before. Like, this is it, guys. That was the first time he had an audience. He was showing the audience, and then everything went to shit right there.
I thought the whole time he brought people in and fed them to there, and that was like what he was doing.
He was feeding horses. He was bringing. That's why he was buying so many horses from the farm, from the ranch, and then he was bringing horses out. And then that was the first unveiling. Like that was a soft show. Like, okay, we got this down. We got the thing, and it will show up here if we bring it the horse. And there's enough people getting eyes on the thing, and then things like, oh no, you fucking don't. You know,
we shook them all in. That's what we do.
Well, how fucking brutal it is. Plus, like the part when I think this is a movie that's been out long enough this year for people to possibly see it. If we're going to spoilers now, but when you're kind of you see getting sucked in, but then you just kind of get like they don't even show everything, but enough the context they show makes it like, God, what a fucking way to go. When you see people going like getting dragged through like its insides, you actually show that, and then later you just see it's kind of like breathing, and then just like constricts, and just all the screaming just stops. Yep. And then all the blood and like keys and all the shit just starts
all the metal stuff
out.
Just craps it all out.
It literally starts shitting blood and all the metal just on top of the house, you know? So just like, oh man, it just adds so much context to everything else. And plus the movie was funny in itself. And it wasn't even just like, here's the big jokes. It was like, here's like a lot of the, like when the thing parks over him, it says like, okay, it says the title of the movie, whatever, but it works. He just like stops right over him, just looks like, no, just close the door. Just like reaches over, like pushes a little thing down to lock the door. You know, or there's even just some of the small things the sister was saying, and they even had the Akira slide. They finally, in live action, they pulled off the Akira slide in a really badass way.
Yeah, that's true.
But no, there's even some small things of just like there's the TMZ reporter, like because you are kind of like, fuck that guy. Like, hey guys, what happens to like an electric bike when it flies into like 60 miles an hour in a electromagnetic field? Just sort of distance, see the guy just floating, no noise. Just see the guy fall out. She like screams and like this arm the other way around. Like that movie's still a comedy in a lot of aspects.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. There's a lot of stuff going on. Well, I even like they got the Fries guy there, and the first thing I thought, I'm like, does Fries still exist? Because I haven't seen the Fries in forever. The San Jose one I know is not there anymore.
They did when they were making the movie. They put it in that was one of their few product placements.
Yeah, well, I guess
good did them though.
Maybe there's one still in Los Angeles. That's all. Now I'm kind of on the outlook. I know a Fries can't be as good as it once was. Like that San Jose one was like magic in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
The pyramid one, yeah.
Yeah, it was just it was like take everything from every electronics store, shove it into one. I mean, you can buy stuff that was not even like legal. Let's be honest. Like you could buy those like weird kind of devices that let you play PlayStation 1 games on your Dreamcast and so on. Like where else? That's like something you feel like you're going to find in like Chinatown or something. You're not going to find that just like an electronics store. Fries had it.
I don't want to derail us too much, but there's this one time where like I was like probably like 12 or 13 and I was in Fry's Electronics and I was in the anime section. And then there is like, and they did not do a good job of separating the anime there. You know, you could be looking for, it was not very specified. It was just anime.
Yeah.
So, and there's like a mom walking by with her grandkid, like just kind of glancing at all these animes. She grabs one, pulls one out. It's La Blue Girl, you know, and she looks at like this, like, you know, this censored, like, you know, just like black bars, this chick getting tentacle gangbanged. And then she's like, just puts it back. Like, I just want to find Finding Nemo. What's Finding Nemo?
Yeah,
I could have told her, oh, there's a Disney section, like a block, like a section over. But I just kind of like, it's kind of fun to watch. It's just fun to watch this old lady just kind of flip through just these anime movies. It was just animation, is all it said. So she was just looking through these anime, all these anime, like, oh, like, they weren't all hentai. But she stumbled across a couple of hentai. Like, I can't. It's just like, what?
So sometimes I love just not saying anything and just letting somebody else figure it out on their own. I think that's sometimes can be more fun. But exactly. But yeah, nope. Fries, both good. Fries back in the day, at least. Yeah. No, that was one of those ones. As I said, though, the chimpanzee part, though, was the part that, like, just watching that. I think it's just I always just know those stories of, like, oh, chimpanzees, you know, they chew off the fingers and they bite the nose off and they poke the eyes out, like, you know, just some, like, rabid animals and so on. And just having that scene, like, oh, shit, somebody actually finally did that in a movie. It's like one of those ones where it's like, you're like, it's surprising it's actually taken this long. I mean, granted, there's probably some movie out there that's done it before, too. But, you know, for the most part, I'd never seen it yet.
Well, plus that scene's also just super creepy in itself. And like how there's a whole misunderstanding. Like he thinks he has a bond with this alien. It's like, no. The reason the monkey didn't kill you is because you weren't looking directly in his eyes, because he had the veil of the sheet of the tablecloth blocking his eyes. So he wasn't directly looking. So that's just the small things like that. But yeah, that's a really good movie.
Yeah,
that was your 8?
Yeah, that's my 8. So we're on to your 7.
My 7, RRR, and I believe it's abbreviated for Rise, Roar, Revolt.
I might have this one.
So this is a movie actually got recommended to me from our friend Marley, formerly the water cooler. Now Marley loves. Now I think it's now the Real Lovers podcast. He recommended this movie to me, and what it is it is a Indian action movie. Now,
really? Like Native American or Indian?
India, in like India, okay. Indian, and it's like, God, how do I put this? It's cheesy, it's campy, but it's a lot of fun. And every so often you get those movies where it's just kind of like I'm going to make an example. And this isn't a franchise and Marley might even get mad at me for making this example because he loves this franchise. I don't hate or dislike this franchise. I like it enough. I'm not in love with it. I like it enough. But sometimes you get something like Fast and the Furious, okay? Fast and the Furious is fucking ridiculous. And it knows it's ridiculous. But sometimes I feel like doesn't go as far to the point where it's taken itself as a comedy, but it still wants you to like, that's so fucking cool. Like I didn't see the movie, but then the number 10, there's the part where there's other cool shit, but this in these films, this was just fucking stupid. I don't care what you say. he's driving the car and goes off a ledge and the car hooks onto something and he's swinging around like fucking Tarzan. I'm like, okay, it's a comedy. It's not a comedy. It's not a comedy, and you're doing that shit. Maybe it is a comedy, and I'm just overlooking it. But that sounds like some shit.
They played it pretty straight. Let's be honest. There's not like they're not playing that for like in a weird way, like a wink wink. I feel like it is going for some like almost the equivalent of like a Hot Wheels, like, you know, live action movie.
Yeah. So the reason I bring that up, I'm not trying to bring down Fast and Furious for the sake of bringing something else up. However, RRR is one of those things where it has things almost as ridiculous in that. And yes, it plays it very straight, but it keeps doubling down in almost in a way that I'm not sure if they're aware of how over the top and how kind of silly this is, but they're so because Fast and Furious just seems like just hooks in the car, swings around. Yeah, that's just I got the vibe from that trailer, where this just seems like, no, you don't get it. You don't fucking get it. This is where like they were pouring all their fucking passion. Now, heads up, this is a 3-hour movie, 5-minute movie actually. And what it is it takes place in India, and I don't remember the exact year, but during British occupation. And there's a small village out in the jungle, and this little girl was like giving like one of those like temporary tattoos to like a British lady and singing a song like, oh, I like her. Buy the child. And they just threw some, they don't speak the same language. They threw some coins like, oh, that's nice. She paid us. That's nice. Thank you. Like, wait. They're taking the kid. We thought they were just paying for the song. You can't do that. You can't do that. You know, they knock him out and they take the kid. And then it's just like, okay, so they hire somebody, or not even hire, he's a guy from the village. They get somebody who is going to go into town and try and find the kid. And the guy's kind of like this gentle giant. He's this gentle giant, but he's driven on finding this kid. Then there's this soldier, this British soldier, but he's Indian, but he's in the British service. And he's just trying to work his way up the ranks. More about him comes out later, but he's trying to work his way up the ranks and try and prove he's better. And the base way I can think of this, think of kind of like, what's the guy who did like The Good, the Bad, the Weird, The Last Stand, I Saw the Devil. What's his name?
G.K. Oh God, I can't remember, but that Korean director guy he makes fantastic movies. Makes me wonder if he's done in a while. It's
kind of like, imagine his action scenes with a little bit of John Woo, with a little bit of like kind of, I guess, Fast and the Furious for just the ridiculousness. It kind of has that kind of vibe. Like they kind of like the action scenes go crazy. Like the action scenes are so well thought out. So anyway, I derailed myself there for a second. The British officer who's also Indian. Yeah, he is tasked. He realizes if he brings in this person who's trying to track down this little girl from this regal family, if he brings that guy in, he's gonna be able to move up the rank and be able to get the rank he wants. So he starts doing that. He starts trying to track this guy down. Then one day, there's a little kid. Some chain reaction happens. There's a little kid surrounded by fire, and these two guys lock eyes. The guy looking for the kid and the cop. And they just lock each other. They just lock eyes like, we're going to save this fucking kid, you know? And they just basically do it in this crazy over the top, kind of like slingshot, look around, grab him, you know? And it's very well done. And then that's when the opening titles comes up. And by that point, it's 30 minutes into the movie. and then like the action scenes are like that, like almost not Yoon Woon Ping level like choreography, but very well done action scenes. Like it almost has this anime level style. There's a point where somebody is like tied to like a chained to like a part of a statue, and he just does something to break it off, and he starts swinging the thing around like he's an anime character in a fighting game, and like slamming it down. And one guy's obviously meant to be fire, one guy's obviously meant to be water. At some point they're fighting. One guy is holding like some kind of like fire, like firework type things. The other guy has like broke off a hose and they're fighting with it, and it's slow-mo, just like it sounds fucking stupid, but they commit to it, and they commit really fucking hard, and they go out of their way to make it look as cool as possible. And the other thing is, like, there's like, this is going to sound so fucking stupid, and believe me, it is kind of stupid, but once again, they commit so hard, they make me believe it. There's a part where there's a character who he's been in jail for so long, he's been tortured, his legs are broken and they can hardly work. I don't know if they're broken, but he can hardly stand. But he's been working his upper body the whole time. He's been working his upper body, doing lifts and sit-ups and push-ups the whole time. So when they break him out, what they do is one guy sits him like on his shoulders and throws him the gun. He's running through. He's like, boom, boom. He has like two guns. He's like shooting the other guy. The other guy's running and sliding, kicking. He like kicks a gun out of another guy's hand. He catches it, like leans over his shoulder, shoots another guy. So it's like that crazy over the top shit. And it just like, I say that it sounds fucking stupid, and it is, but they make it. They go so out of their way to make it look cool, and so much thought goes into every action scene. There's not one action scene in this movie where you're like, that seems a little phoned in. Like everything in it is so thought out. Like, and I'll stop. I'll let us go on to the next movie in a second because I can talk about it for a while. But there's a part in the movie. It has like this kind of action scenes where, for instance, there's a part where one of them's trying to lure a tiger out. And it's for a while, it's just a chase. He's just trying to stay away from the tiger. And to be fair, the CG on the animals is not that good, but whatever. Why you're there. So. And it's as simple as like, okay, we just got to lure the tiger into this net. But then like that kind of happens, but then like the tiger pulls up and the things holding the net up come up. So then he kind of grabs it and then he's able to turn it around. And then he's bringing like these two hooks together, which are going to hold the tiger back in the net. But as he's about to hook it in, they both snap. And the tiger swings back and jumps back at him. And then he has to do there's like 2 or 3 other things he has to do before he submits this thing. And right as soon as you think it's going to finish, something else stacks up on top. Now, something else I got to give you a heads up on is there's like 2 musical numbers in this movie. And I was like, well, it's an Indian movie. I didn't see half coming, but that's on me. I should have. Like there's a part where they go to like a British, like some fancy British banquet of some kind. And there's some like poshy asshole like, look, what do you think you're doing here? You can't tango. You savages can't do this. You can't do that. Like, well, you can't. And then the one of the Indian guys like, oh, yes, well, I'm sure you can't do the, he says the name of this dance. Like, they start singing a song, like, this like full on, like 5-minute fucking dance number. And all the ladies there are like, that looks pretty fun. They jump into. So it's just like, it's this fucking crazy over the top movie, but it's really fun. I mean, it's 3 hours, so clear. It's a part of your day, but it's really fun. I really liked it.
This one sounds really interesting to me. I wish I would have saw this because this just sounds like total fun. It kind of reminds me of sort of like in a way like Born to Fight, the Thailand movie, where it just is like the most patriotic movie I've ever seen in my entire life. But patriotic is in like full on, Thailand style. What's the movie? This movie's called RRR.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's patriotic as fuck. Trust me. Like the last thing in the movie is, I mean, granted, I don't know India's history that well, and there wasn't subtitles for the songs, but the closing credits is a big like song and dance number, and then like kind of similar to the one I just told you about. There's like 1 or 2 of those, and then at some point in the song, they'll have a mural of some prominent looking figure, and they just kind of give this. So I'm guessing they're like praising the people that have revolted or started revolutions in the past. Something like that. I'm assuming
some of those other guys that aren't Gandhi, I feel like in America, that's all you know is Gandhi. Yeah, him.
I didn't see Gandhi on there. I didn't see Gandhi. Like, yeah, Gandhi didn't throw a punch though. These guys did. It's kind of
one of those things.
But no, it was a badass movie, and I really recommend it. It's silly and over the top as fuck, but it's fun.
So jumping back into it, I'm going with my number 7. My number 7, I'm gonna go with Jurassic Park 6.
Jurassic Park 6, Fallen King. No. Which one was this?
No, I think Fallen Kingdom was number 5.
Yeah.
It's I just wrote down Jurassic Park 6. That's what I've always called it. I know it's called something else. Jurassic World Dominion.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
You know, and I will say, out of that trilogy of the new Jurassic Worlds, I like this one by far way more than the other two. You know, I felt like this one was definitely the most dialed in. They got rid of all the junky kind of characters. You just have your classic characters with a couple new ones, and the new ones all seem to work too, you know. And I think the other thing that was kind of interesting in the movie, especially like on the second time I watched it or third time or whatever, I still just love how that movie is like 3 different movies almost in one, you know, of like styles. Like, you know what I mean? Because Jurassic Park movies mostly always fall into like, they have like sort of the Terminator issue sometimes where they keep kind of, not like the first couple, but like they keep kind of going back like, okay, let's just do what made it, like, what's it work? It's, you know, it's the park system, all this kind of stuff here. Where I like how in this one, it like, you know, it starts off and first, it's just like you're on this literally like, you know, they're out in North America and it's almost kind of like survival. They're living off the land, you know, things have changed and all this kind of stuff. But then it sort of, as it goes on, it starts becoming like almost like espionage, like 0070 for a moment when they're like in Europe and, you know, so on. And then they get to the park system and they see the new sort of preserve that they got now. It's not really a park anymore. Well, it is a park, but it's not like a tourist park. It's a, you know, preservation stuff and so on there. And I just thought that, you know, the overall, it's just a good, fun movie. You know, maybe it's not the most dialed in Jurassic Park one, but I still really enjoyed it quite a bit.
I thought it was a fun movie. I liked it. I didn't like it as much as you because it didn't make my list, but at the same time, it was good seeing the members of the original cast again interact with each other. And I thought they actually interacted with the new cast pretty well. And yeah, it was. I found that to be a fun movie. And as far as it's probably my second favorite of the new trilogy, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun film.
Yeah, the only thing it's really missing having Vince Vaughn. I don't know, like nobody wants to call Vince Vaughn up to come back. It's not like his character died. Like, come on, you know.
I think if Vince Vaughn showed up, people are like, wait, was he like? They're talking like, well, it's been a while. Vince, like, what's Eddie something or like?
No, because Eddie Carr's the poor. Oh right. The poor bald guy
gets ripped in half. He gets ripped in half by the T-Rexes.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember Vince Vaughn's character's name right off the bat, but you know, yeah, it's like what's one of those ones I always feel like he's the main character of literally the second one, you know, and you never see him again. Same thing with what's her name too,
Julianne Moore,
red-haired lady. Yeah, Julianne Moore. Yeah, like she could have came back too. It's not like she died either, you know.
Well, she and Malcolm never got back together or something like that. Yeah. Who knows? But where she's like, fuck that. I went to die. Like, you know, she's like, I saw dinosaurs before and I thought it fucking sucked. Like, yeah, I tried to fucking tell you, but you had to go anyway. And I don't even want to be here. But dinosaurs keep on fucking happening. Chaos theory. I told you this fucking bullshit. Yeah.
One of my 6 kids went along with it too. You know, that's the thing. Malcolm always talks about he has all these kids. And we've only seen one of them. You know, well, and even though I've go ahead. Oh, I was just saying, speaking of his kids, like the one thing I still always kind of thought was that, you know, in the new one, we literally have this pilot lady in here. And I felt like generally I do not like what I always call the cul-de-sac style of like storytelling where like for some reason everybody seems to live on the same block and they all know each other. But this was one of those few moments where I felt like, because that lady's sort of just there and she doesn't really have like, she's just like fill-in character. And I almost feel like it's not that she's a bad character. She's just literally just there. She has no tie to anything else. Like even her like reasoning for going there seems kind of a little bit kind of like, you just want to fly there? No money involved. Everything in your entire life has been money involved. And for once you just get this change of heart. Like I think it would have been better if that could have been Kelly. And she's been like, I haven't seen my dad in like 15 years, you know, or whatever, you know, but I know he's there and I got to go save him or something. Or maybe not even that. Maybe just like, I got to go save my dad. I'm going to fly you guys there. That would be like, I think the way to sort of tie that around. I don't know why that was sort of missing. Like that just felt like one of those ones. Like I know that there's that weird thing that they don't want to represent Jurassic Park 2 as much, but
I think it's also something to the effect of, well, actually not even so much going off that, but to link back to the whole kids thing. That is like a way you always could tie it back and make it all connect somehow. Like if they have, because we never seen his kids. So it doesn't matter what the kids look like because we know Jeff Goldblum gets around. So you could have like any character as long as they're roughly our age, any character can come in, be like, what's your credentials or whatever? And like, well, my father is one of the greatest mathematical minds of the gym. Like, yeah, Malcolm, you know, they could do some shit like that. Like,
Yep.
or they make it a twist, like, oh, it's Ian Malcolm's kid, you know, just something kind of like that. Like, oh, I see you changed your last name. Like, hey, Dad, I just want to go my own way. Oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, it's fine. I only just paid for college and everything else. You know, just some very Jeff Goldblum kind of like, you know, passive aggressive line.
Yeah, exactly. You know, yeah, it's one of those ones. I feel like there's stuff like there, but you know, it's actually, I think one of the best parts actually in this Jurassic Park 6 though, is the fact that they actually finally figure it out. Like, you don't need to actually have a kid character. I mean, I know you have the one girl, but she's like 16, 17. So she's almost past that kid age, because that was one of those, like, that's like one of those traps that they sort of fall in. They're like, well, that's what worked for the first one, so we got to always keep going back to the well and making sure we have a kid character. It reminds me of the same problem that Terminator has. Is Terminator, they go, it's a cat and mouse chase game, so it always has to be that. It's like, it doesn't always have to be that. Terminator can be so many other things. Terminator should be a war movie. Like, that's ever since I was a kid, that should have been a war movie. And it's the same thing like Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park should be able to go wherever it wants and not be stuck to any reason. And I do think that 6, it keeps still like the park and some of those things in there, and the movie kind of ends in more of a classic Jurassic Park way. But I will say, like, the first 2/3 of the movie I kind of like, because it's like, it's a very fresh take on, like, hey, here's some stuff that you're just not normally used to in like these movies, and we're not treading the same water again.
Yeah, it was a fun movie, and I liked that one. I liked it. It was cool seeing it was cool seeing Alan Grant and Sadler and Malcolm back.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's kind of the thing there. And it definitely is, you know, it's hitting those nostalgic buttons. But I think the main reason why I kind of have on my list is I know this is one of those movies that I could probably watch more than some of the other ones on there and stuff. Because I even kind of, there were some other movies that I kind of like, this place is like, it's either this movie or this movie. And I was like, I kind of hate to say it. I think this one, there's some movies I think that actually might be better, but I probably would watch this one more. And that's why I kind of put it on that list.
No, I get you. Yeah. No, that's kind of the same thing with me. Like, there's some movies that kind of go for like coming up that I think might not be as good as some of the other movies I named off, but I could just watch them more, or it just hits that right little nostalgia button, you know?
Yep. And I think I always have to, I hate to say it, but at the end of the day, not saying you can't have all the types of different movies and so on. And I like all the different feelings you get from, you know, different genres and styles. But at the end of the day, like, what makes them, you know, if I could watch a movie more often, it's always going to be slightly higher on my list.
Yeah. And that kind of, are we can double
let's go
Jurassic?
to, what are you on? Six?
6. So that leads us talk about nostalgia and how frequently you can watch the movie, and that leads to my number 6, Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Oh wow! I did not expect this movie to be so far down on your list, to tell you the truth.
I don't think 6 is that far down, really. I know it's a little less than halfway.
In a top 10 list, I would have expected this to be up a little bit higher, but that's...
Well, the thing with it is, even though I really like the movie, I like the movie a lot. But the thing with the movie is, I guess the one thing about it is, I guess the reason it is not higher is because it's a lot of nostalgia and love of the character and that franchise of why it's on the list in the first place. Really, if you break it down, it is a very kind of easy, by the numbers action adventure movie, a family film. But at the exact same time, and then like even some of the family, I'll be honest, Sonic 1, even though I like Sonic 2 way more, Sonic 1 is, I think, funnier than Sonic 2, if I had to be 100% honest. I think the story of Sonic 2 is better, but Sonic 1 is actually a little funnier. That said, Sonic 2 knows more of what it is, and it has no problem embracing all the Sonicness of it. And I mean, really, I'll be honest, this list is fairly interchangeable in some ways. I have my couple that this one needs to be a little lower, this one needs to be a little higher. It's relatively interchangeable for the most part. You know, I just list it down just for the sake of a list. But this particular movie, I think the reason why I have it sort of more in the middle is because I do watch this movie. It brings me a lot of joy. It just hits all those nostalgia buttons. I guess the reason it's just not a little higher just because I know that there is some kind of like story problems with it. I mean, there's the wedding thing, which has been talked to death. That's not enough to kill the movie for me, but it is something I notice. And there's even some other aspects of like, once Tails comes in, there's a minute before Sonic and Tails can do Sonic and Tails shit. And after they escape Knuckles, the first thing they do is have a Russian dance off. So there's some things kind of like that, which it's not horrible in that way, but it's also kind of like, let's get to more of the Ice Cap stuff. Let's get more to the Mystic Ruin stuff, you know. But this movie still is fun, and the real part of this movie where it really shines. I mean, the whole movie itself is pretty entertaining with the side of the wedding thing. Even the wedding thing has a couple moments where you kind of chuckle a little bit. But the thing where the movie really shines is like basically the Labyrinth Zone / Mystic Ruins area to the very end. Like from there to there. If that movie kind of kept up that pace and kept up, that movie might be like number 1 or number 2 for me. But just as a big time Sonic fan, I was just happy to see things accurately represented in a good movie where I think the movie could be better, in all honesty, watching it again. But it's still a movie that makes me happy every time I watch it. I'm just glad it exists. And I only have nothing but optimistic. I'm only optimistic for what the future brings for the third one.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it is one of those movies. I'll say it's one of those ones, like, it's kind of a hard sell if you don't care about Sonic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you probably aren't going to really dig it the same way. I think as far as it's such a milestone step for like kind of like video game movies where it's like, it's not saying there's not good video game movies. I'll be the first one to say that I think the majority of video game movies are pretty, you know, entertaining and so on. But this one's that one where it's like, hey, they finally got the blockbuster video game movie done right, in a sense, where it's like you get the actual locations, you got pretty much, it's feeling like Sonic the Hedgehog. It's got the main characters in there of Robotnik, Tails, and Knuckles. You know, it's got all that stuff. It does, you know, still have a little bit of the stuff carried over from like the first one, like the family dynamics and so on. But it's not bad. It's one of those ones like, if that wasn't in there, it'd probably be better for the video game fan, I think. But since it's there, it's not like there's nothing wrong with it, though, at the same time. Like, I can handle it. Like, it's even all the scenes. There is a handful of scenes in there. It's like the wedding scene. Like, it's only a minute moment. It's not, it's a bad scene. It's just, you know, that is that one that you go, if you were crunching the numbers, you're like, well, that's 10 minutes. That could be another Sonic scene, you know, realistically. Let's be honest. But, whatever. It does lead the gun and all that kind of stuff. So there is something there, but
yeah, and it, just to cap it off on that, it is a movie that I really do like, and the fact that it's not low, the fact that it's like number 6 as opposed to number 2 or 3, don't take that as like this movie needs to do a lot more. It's also just one of those movies I feel like I've seen family movies written better than this one. But at the same time, my love for Sonic outweighs a lot of that. And when I combined with my love for that character and that franchise, combined with a good movie, just a good movie and not a movie that really felt like it was going to, because if you think back on Sonic 1, a big saving grace of Sonic 1 was the redesign. Because I think if they didn't do the redesign and that movie came out, what would have happened was people were like, oh, it's better than I thought it was going to be, but it was hard to get past that design, and it probably would have stopped dead.
Yeah, the uncanny look.
There. It would have stopped dead right there, and maybe it would have been maybe 5 to 10 years before they took another stab at Sonic again, you know, before they decided to reboot it. And this one, it's got the baggage of the first one, but it's moving forward in a good direction, and it's a pretty fast-paced movie. It's fun. It has the characterization down. Idris Elba is Knuckles, fucking steals the show. Colleen, I forget her last name, Colleen O'Shaughnessy. Colleen is Tails. Like, reprises her role, does a great job, and everyone in the movie does great. And I look forward to the future of this franchise, and this movie is not a step in the right direction. It's like a massive leap in the right direction. So it's a Sonic leap on a spring. Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
But yeah, well, climbing farther up the list and so on, I guess I'll jump into my number 6. And my number 6 is Babylon with Brad Pitt.
I wanted to see this. This is on my wanted to see list, but it wasn't playing at any theater near me. It's playing here, just not any theater near me.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that I'll say right off the bat, it's definitely not a movie for everybody. It's one of those movies that I could see, like, if you had 5 people walk in the theater, probably 3 out of 5 of them are going to walk up and be like, that movie was terrible. I don't not know what the hell was going on in it. You know what I mean? It's one of those movies. It literally even has one of those moments at the very beginning of the film that's like, are you in or are you out? It's got this like almost jackass-like scene. It starts off with there's these guys that are loading up this elephant to take it to a party. And the guy thinks he's supposed to be loading up a horse. And it's like, no, it's an elephant. Take the elephant. And so they're driving this elephant up this old dirty, dusty road in like, Los Angeles 1920s, and this elephant's going, and they're like, well, the truck's just like petering out and just barely can do it. So they tie a winch up to it and they start doing. They're like, get out and start pushing. They start getting out pushing. They're pushing this truck, and then all of a sudden, it shows the elephant's face. It's like, and then it just shows ass, elephant butthole, and just blasting out shit all over the people like a fucking storm pit, like a sewage tank all over this guy. And the guy's like, oh, like going in his mouth and everything. I mean, I felt like it's like this is like. Is this fucking Jack? Is that Steve-O in this scene? Like, what's going on here?
It sounds like some Ace Ventura shit right here.
Yeah, it's like just like that, but I mean like extreme. And like that's the thing is I felt like that was like that right there is gonna break a lot of people that think they're going into like, oh, I'm going into an artsy movie. And then they see like, oh, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, and then the movie, it starts off and it goes chaos. The movie's shot chaotically. It's acted chaotically. Everything about it's just chaos for like 45 minutes. Because this is not one of those films that's like 3 hours and 10 minutes long. The credits don't pop up till like the 45-minute mark where it says Babylon. And it's just this ridiculous party that they're going to. This is where that elephant's going to. And it's all about these like 1920s silent movie star people. And the theme of this is I think it's a double kind of whammy of like it's movies going into the talkies and not being able to transition very well, like a lot of the same people like that. And it's so I think the transition of like, this is the wild and crazy, in a sense, the Wild West times of movie making in the 20s where you could do anything you fucking wanted and nobody's going to tell you that you couldn't do it. Ultimate freedom. I mean, stuff was just crazy. Nothing was like being really censored or any of that kind of stuff. And then the code comes in 1934 and the businessmen start coming in, the studios start taking over and starts changing the dynamic of like what can be on there. And I think it's just a double whammy of combining that together, which makes for this really cool period piece of you're watching these silent movie, characters. Brad Pitt's like a silent movie star. You know what I mean? You got Margot Robbie in there. She's like an up and comer. And then you got this, other guy, I can't remember the actor's name, but this Mexican guy who joins in. He's literally the guy bringing the elephant at first. And next, he works his way up till he's like one of the biggest directors of silent movies and so on like that, and progressing his way into the talkies and so on. These 3 characters just kind of revolve around. And the movie's funny. It's got action in it. It's got all kinds of great scenes, but then it starts going from this like chaos, these wild parties and just like weird sex stuff and all this stuff. I mean, like not like anything like it's a sex scene. It's just all like the background. You just see a guy just like banging another guy and just this like elephants dancing. I mean, like just like funny type stuff. Like
elephants on parade.
Yeah, just like it's just ridiculous, and people just doing blow and drugs and all kinds of stuff and getting hammered, and it's funny and all stuff. And then it kind of becomes sort of bittersweet, and it becomes more like there's drama parts, and it changes tones many a times in it, but it rolls through, in my personal opinion, so naturally. I think some people would look at this movie like it's a chaotic mess, but I love the chaos part of it.
That's a movie I wanted to see. From when I saw the first trailer, I was like, that is one of the movies I want to see most this year. Just from the first trailer, which is the Paramount logo, and it's white, and you hear someone going, and as they're doing that, you're seeing the stars disappear, and then it cuts to Margot Robbie
Sonic
wiping
3.
her nose away. How do you think he gets his speed?
We got to compete with Cocaine Bear this year. Get Sonic doing something.
He's going down against like Shadow. Like, what? Shadow the Hedgehog's part of the cartel?
Yeah, that's why Gunn's interested in it. But yeah, that's I mean, this movie like has that kind of, it sort of has that Wolf of Wall Street thing. I'll say it's not nearly as like a hard comedy as Wolf of Wall Street is, though it does have a lot of comedy in it. I think it hits a little bit more in the drama department as it keeps going, but the whole way through, it was long, but I was sold. And it's one of those ones, it's one of those movies, probably if you don't care for the 1920s era of like silent movie making and so on, it's probably not nearly as interesting, but just like, it's a very big, like, almost like just like love piece to that kind of era and that time period and that changeover into the 30s, and how things really do change. Like, and a lot of stuff is kind of lost because you just can't do as much as you once could once that code comes by, and talkies, and how some of these people just did not translate properly into them.
Yeah, no, that's on my list of things I wanted to see. It wasn't able to. So
it's one of these movies that the more I even think about it and talk about it, it gets better and better. And I almost will say, if I probably watched it again, it might even be higher on my list. I just have only seen it once because it's, only came out in December, but it's one of those ones that, like, I don't know, the more I'm even talking about it right now, I kind of go, Travels like this will be more than I'm thinking even still. Like, it feels like it keeps climbing for me, I'll
say this is a year of long movies though, because I feel like if there is a movie that was a 2.5 hour movie, well, that was standard. If it was a 2 hour, like 5 minute movie, well, that was short, where I feel like if it was like 3 hours or 3 hours and 10 minutes, like, oh, welcome to the club. Yeah. So like, I think there's so many long ass movies that came out. I mean, I didn't see it, but Avatar 2 is like 3 hours and 10 minutes. That Triple R movie is like 3 hours and 5 or 10 minutes.
You're saying that one. I think it's one of those ones too, especially for like the theaters just don't have a lot of competition for like time space. I mean, like if you got a 10 cinema theater, there's only 5 movies playing in it if you're lucky. So I feel like there's no real like that thing like, hey, we need to fit some more showtimes. It's more like, you need 3 screens for your film. We got it.
Yeah. Pretty
there's just
much,
not as many movies, sadly enough, as far as in cinemas there is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my number 6.
Well, my number 5 is I got a lot of movies streaming. I swear I try to see more in theaters, but they're just a lot of streaming movies. Glass Onion.
Oh, okay. This was once I watched this movie, and to me, it was one of those ones. Okay, I really like Knives Out. Daniel Craig, I thought, I'm like, that character's fucking amazing. All they gotta do is take the same character and just throw him in a brand new situation. I mean, and that seems like what they did with the sequel. This one was kind of weird because I thought it was supposed to come out to the theaters. It literally had like a trailer, and then like they like pulled it or something, and it just didn't come to the theaters. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it popped up on Netflix. And this one I did sit down and watch, but it was one of those ones where I felt like, I don't know, like the beginning part of this movie, I feel could have been trimmed like that first like 20 minutes. I was like, what the hell is going on in this movie? And I was thinking the whole time, like, this can't even be the same dude who made the first one. It feels completely different. Like, it feels like when somebody else gets their hands on it and writes a script and something like that, and like they kind of do their sort of like what they perceived as the movie. And then I see the credits at the end, I'm like, dude, it was him writing and directed, and the movie's so ridiculously like in a weird place.
So here's the thing with this movie. I mean, I actually did see like. I do see it being kind of in that same world aside from the main character. Because if you think about it, like the first one, Daniel Craig's not the main character. He is the guy. He's almost in some way, he's a good character, but in the role of the antagonist, because the girl, the Mexican girl, I don't remember the actress's name.
Yeah.
But she's really the main character. And it's about her. The mystery is, they sweep the mystery out of the way real quickly in the beginning of it, but then things unfold in a weird way. And there's some mystery aspects still left, but overall of how it all happened, we know. And it's more about just seeing this lady stay one step ahead of this master detective. And this one starts off with him as the main character, but then it flips and switches main characters partway through, and he's kind of back to the role he was in the first one. Not so much an antagonist role, but more as just kind of like, I'm here to detect, I'm here to get the story out. I mean, I'm here to get to break it all down and give you the facts. Now it's all up to you guys. And this one's even more of a comedy than the first one, because I'd still call the first one kind of like a mystery comedy, like crime comedy. This one doubles down the comedy aspect, but I think they're both interesting because they both speak on the times, but in just different assets. Like, so it's the first one's a privileged family that, they're all kind of like privileged at different levels, and just where it comes from. You have like there's like the different children of the author. They're all fighting for the rights, and they all have their own agendas. They're always about it. There's a little like neo-Nazi, like incel kid. Then there's the the girl who's
Captain
pretending who. No. There's the Captain America. Yeah, he's very upfront about what he is. But there's the girl who's pretending to be all like open-minded and liberal. But the second her money and her inheritance is in danger, that's where shit suddenly flips.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of calling out a lot of the hypocrisy on those kinds of people.
Yeah.
And then this one, it's more about calling out the hypocrisy on air quotes like self-made people. And people who like, or, like this idea, like we're fucking with the system. Like we're disruptors. Like, are you disruptors? Or are you guys really just assholes that are just seizing opportunity? Are you guys really doing as much for the world as you say you're doing? Or are you really just fucking with everything? And a lot of the characters were fun to watch, even the ones that were assholes, just because you could tell who they were all like supposed to be. Dave Bautista is kind of like this Andrew Tate type, or like Dan Bilzerian or something. Then you have like Edward Norton, obviously supposed to be kind of like an Elon Musk type. Someone who, well, he's a billionaire, he's an entrepreneur, he must be smart. Like, no, look at what he's doing on Twitter. He's a fucking idiot. So it's kind of like a lot of it's just like things. I just thought that was just a very interesting way. Like, yeah, we're taking the whole concept about like we're doing the whole murder mystery thing. We're focusing on this group of people over here, but at the exact same time, we're twisting and turning in a way. It's not as simple as it being a murder mystery. It's literally two different movies kind of at once, and then we're just seeing it from different angles. And I just thought it was a really fun movie. The dialogue had me really engaged. The second I thought I knew what was going to happen, it kind of threw me a curveball, and I never really entirely knew what direction it was. I mean, I had an idea of like, okay, it's probably one of these 2 or 3 characters here. And the movie does things like, because in these kind of movies, you're looking for the small things of like, this person hands something off to this person as they walk forward, talking to this person over here. And those are the things you look for. And the movie has that kind of shit peppered throughout. Like, okay, well, those two are probably working together, because why would that person hand someone off to them like that? Like, oh, it was nothing. It was constant. That was a red herring. That has nothing to do with anything. Or like somebody walks by, like an alarm goes off, and like, oh, that's going to come into play later. No, there's some of those things do come back and play, but there's so many of them. You're trying to pinpoint what's going to come back and bite someone in the ass. But for me, maybe I'm just a dumbass, it wasn't any of the stuff I called. So I just really enjoyed the movie because it did keep me on my toes, and I found all the characters to be enjoyable to watch one way or the other.
Yeah, I like Daniel Craig a lot, and I will say the movie picks up kind of well once it gets past like once they're on the boat. I felt like all this stuff before the boat, I was like, what the hell am I watching? Like, this is so unnecessary. Let's just get going of this movie. And then once they get the boat, it starts to pick up a little bit more. But the one thing for me is like, I felt like the twist was like, I was really expecting there to be an actually good twist, and I was like, oh, it's Edward Norton the whole time? Like, well, that seemed like that was easy enough to say, but I really expected it to be like there was gonna be something like you really didn't expect, and it's like, no, it was literally what I expected the whole time. I'm like, I was kind of, I don't know, maybe I was like thinking, I didn't dislike the movie, but I felt like it was almost like, it wasn't like Kingsman 2 of a letdown, but it was kind of in that kind of category where it's like, it definitely was not nearly as that first one. And it's not that I did enjoy it, but like, it's one of those ones where I don't know, I just felt like, I don't know, this one was just trying to do one. It was a little bit too on the nose of like the time period. Like everybody's wearing fucking masks and stuff. I mean, they just did the thing where they give them like a shot like at the beginning. And it's just like, well, why don't we just skip past that and just get straight to them on the boat and get to the murder mystery and just have Daniel Craig get thrown in there, that kind of stuff.
Well, I thought it was kind of funny just because that whole buildup. Like, I don't mind kind of like long buildups like that, or things to go out of their way for a joke if it actually says something with the story. And the reason I like that is because Edward Norton is this guy who thinks really highly of himself. He thinks he's so smart, and all these people are calling together and trying to figure out this box. And they're all their surroundings. We get an idea of who they are. And the whole thing with it taking place, I think they filmed it during Corona, so they just worked that into the story. And then they also played that into part of the plot of like, well, we're supposed to be in like the what's her name? She played Agatha Harkness in WandaVision. I forgot her name, but the politician. She was like, I'm a left-leaning politician and a dead men's rights activist. is found dead, and I'm at a party when I should be in fucking lockdown. Fuck, like that kind of thing. That kind of built up. So I kind of got why they made it during COVID, or how like during COVID, like how LeBlanc is going stir crazy and all that. And they made his husband or his boyfriend like Hugh Grant or something, which I thought was pretty funny. But then there is like, and plus he's playing Among Us with a bunch of actors who play like detectives or people in mystery shows, which I thought was pretty clever or funny. Just funny little throwaway joke. But anyway, the whole thing with the boxes at the beginning, I thought that was funny because you see these people like just doing the stupid, over the top, elaborate fucking box. And they show the one girl, she's like, just walks away, just bashes it with a fucking hammer. And then she's like, it's right here. So, like, why did I have to do all that shit? Why did I have to do all this stupid bullshit when I could just smash it with a hammer and get to it? It's fine.
Well, it's that thing that shows that character actually outsmarted the boss better than everybody else did, because that's all you had to do was just get to the center. Yeah, well, I'm not saying there's good lines in it. I do like the part where like they call back on Edward Norton's character, like how he's mispronouncing things throughout the whole thing, and at first it just kind of goes over your head, like they just mispronounced that. Well, whatever, the movie's still going. I guess and then it calls it up on him. It's like, dude, you've been mispronouncing these words. Like you just been making shit up half the time, and all that kind of stuff. There is good stuff in there. It is fun. It's just one of those ones I felt like maybe because my expectations were so high on it, like I thought it was going to be like an amazing movie, and as I said, it just didn't. To me, it felt different than the first one. It felt like there was almost something missing in there. Like, and as I said, that's what blew me away when I realized it was. I can't remember that dude's name right now, but he did Looper and Brick. Yeah, Ryan Johnson. Is like when I saw his name on the writer directors, I was like, shit, that's the same guy. That's not. That felt like it. Literally felt like when somebody else, like almost like when a sitcom and the writers change on it, and all of a sudden it's the same characters, but you're like something's off. Like they're just not written the same way anymore.
I just thought it was, I thought it was an interesting expansion on that world. It seemed to fit. And I also appreciate, it felt kind of like, I like this one more than the first one, in all honesty.
Really? Wow. That's blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, no, I didn't know you had such shitty taste. Wow, you really like this one more? Fuck.
I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those ones. It's one of those ones. This movie's like, yeah, I did. That's like, oh, that's one of those ones where I watched. I was like, I didn't even write that one down on my list. I'm like, I know it's not going to breach my top 10 at all, close to it.
I guess for me, plus this group of characters, I mean, because the thing is, the group of the people, they all fucking suck, with the exception of like the girl, the girl, the
Daniel Craig,
twin sister and Daniel Craig, only people who are, but they also kind of give depth to like, I feel kind of bad for the Jessica Henwick character, because small things like her, because she's just the publicist, but she's seen some shit, because out of nowhere, and she's talking to Kate Hudson, she starts playing with a butterfly knife like really naturally. So it's like, oh, she had a fucking life before this, Or then there's like things like, even the character Whiskey, who was the Instagram model type. She like, like, okay, yeah, sure, she could just be the trophy girlfriend and just be kind of like ditzy, but she's like, I don't want to be this. I kind of want to be more than this, but and so it's kind of like, I thought that was interesting. And plus I feel like even though I enjoyed watching all those shitty people in the first one, it's like, I get it. Rich, upper class family with a lot of privilege. I get it. Okay. There wasn't a lot of variety. I mean, they were all different characters, but there wasn't a lot of variety. They were all family. They all came from the same place. Okay. This one, they were all vastly different. And I just found it interesting watching all these different characters from different walks of life that were all equally shitty in one way or the other interacting. And I thought more funny stuff came out of that. But yeah, that was my number 5. That was my number 5. And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's an interesting one there. I mean to say it like that, but listen, I enjoyed it. But, yeah. Interesting.
Good for you, I guess. Yeah. I'm glad someone enjoyed it.
Are you writing down notes on me now? Like, yeah. I'm analyzing this for later.
Like, new co-hosts, in search of, does not like requirements, must not like glass onion.
So I didn't dislike it. I just thought it was just okay. And as I said, I felt like, I don't know, maybe my expectations were high there and whatnot. But going to number 5, Going with another Brad Pitt classic already with Bullet Train.
Bullet Train was a lot of fun. I really liked that one.
Yeah, that one was just one of those ones where second that trailer appeared and you see Brad Pitt, he's in Japan, he's on a train. Like, I'm already sold. You like hit me with like all the things I like. You know, if it was just snowing and there was a train there with Brad Pitt in it and he's in Japan, like I don't think movies could get any better than that almost.
Well, this one was just like when it first started. This one did not make my number 10. I mean, it could have been on the list. It would have been like among honorable mentions probably, but I figured you would be talking about it, so here we are. I thought the thing about it, because when I saw it, I was like, when I first saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, he's working his way through the train and fighting a bunch of people, each car, kind of like Snowpiercer or something like that. That's cool. Mm-hmm. And then like, oh, wait, no, it's more like all these different people interacting on this train at the same time, and it's trying to be like one of those Tarantino knockoff style films from like ranging from the late 90s to like mid 2000s. But then I'm like, it kind of wrapped me back in as it went on, though. Like I had to kind of get over the first initial hump of the first 15 minutes, but past that, I kind of got back into it.
That's the same way I felt too. The first 15 minutes, I was a little bit unsure when I was watching this movie. I was like, ooh, is this just going to feel like one of those ones where someone's trying really hard and they think that they're like a really good witty writer and it's just not. And then it's like, no. It starts working. At first I was going like, okay, hopefully these characters aren't just they're just really trying to ape the Guy Ritchie thing. And then it starts working its own way, you know, and it's based off like a Japanese novel. So I'm always wondering the whole time, like this novel's got to be very interesting to read too. I always like to pick that up. I know Brad Pitt's probably not, you know, I know he's probably Japanese and I don't think he's even the main character in the novel. I think actually the Japanese dude is in it that's in this one. But this is just one of the movies where great action. It's funny, good cast of characters. You know, this one I feel actually has good twists and turns as it kind of goes on and you sort of see stuff going. Yeah, I just really like the living daylights out of this film.
Well, it's even a lot of the small things, kind of like how Brad Pitt, he's an ex-hitman who just does smash and grabs now, and he's just trying to get his way out of the life. And he has therapy, and he's always talking to Sandra Bullock over the phone, and she's like, "Oh, therapy, how's that going?" I'm like, "Oh, it's going really good." She's being all like snarky with him the whole time, and he's dealing with all these angry hitmen with obvious anger issues because they're hitmen. Why wouldn't they have it?
Yeah.
And then he's just like, "Hey, man, every time you point a finger at somebody, there's at least 3 fingers pointing back at you, okay?" You know, it's just like something kind of like that. Or like people who are quick to anger aren't quick to resolutions. That's all I'm saying, you know, in the part when the Michael Shannon character is going on his bad guy monologue and Brad Pitt's like, I think you just need to like, therapy helped me. I don't know. I think you just got to work this shit out, you know? Like, you just got to talk to somebody about these things. You know, he's giving this bad guy speech. So the fact they treat this this was a comedy helped.
Yeah, Zach, I just like how, like, you know, he never tries to kill anybody, but like because of his almost like self-defense and training and so on like that, people just kind of get brutally murdered along the way, you know, and just chaos kind of unleashes. And just the cool tie-ins. You got the Russians in there. You got, you know, the Yakuza and kind of like almost like a samurai even theme to it. There's just a lot of stuff going on. It literally has that kind of like, this is sort of an American live action sort of anime feel to everything.
Even Bad Bunny is just like we see like in his like flat, because this was something like this you would see in like a Tarantino style like ripoff or a Guy Ritchie knockoff, where somebody has like, we get a quick glimpse in their life story and then we see them die like after 1 or 2 action scenes, and then like he's just like, "You killed my family, I don't know who the fuck you are, man," and he's just like tripping back trying not to die.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's just a whole lot of fun going on in this film, and this is one of those ones where I felt like it delivered the whole way through pretty much. You know, that trailer pumped it up. You know, my expectations were high, but I really did dig Bullet Train.
All right, that's your number 5.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that leads to my number 4. My number 4 is An Unbreakable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh, the Nicolas Cage one.
Yeah, that made my list.
That was a fun one. I saw that in theaters when it came out, and I definitely enjoyed it. You know, I liked how it was just like the ultra fan, you know, bringing in like Nicolas Cage, like just my favorite actor of all time, you know, and he's just this kind of like, what was he, like a drug lord or something like that over in like Spain?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing about that movie. Because I heard the concept of it, and I'm not one of those people who's like, I'm a huge Nick Cage fan. Like, he has his movies I really like. And then, I even last year, Pig made my list. And I said this, sometimes he's in movies like, okay, that wasn't so good. Nick Cage was just acting weird or crazy the whole time. But then you get those movies like Pig, where you're like, oh, he could play this kind of role. Only he can do this kind of movie, And
like a Mandy or something like that too.
Yeah, so something kind of like that. And you need these kind of actors like him to kind of go out there and take these risks. And this movie is a little bit more self-reflection. And I think it's kind of like that weird middle ground between kind of like a 90s Nick Cage blockbuster and something, it's definitely not on the same like artsy level as say Mandy or Pig, but it's kind of like that middle ground because it is a comedy, but that concept, because I think the concept alone could work for a movie. Just the idea of like an actor who's a wash up has to go stay with this like drug cartel guy. But the thing that makes it make that extra step up is rather than just having Nick Cage play a washed up actor, they actually go and get Nick Cage and he's playing himself. I think that kind of adds another level to it, not just on the meta aspect of it, but I think it helps narrow in because by this point we know who Nick Cage is and we know he is this very eccentric guy and we see him in interviews where he acts all weird. And then like they incorporate that into his character where he's got to be the center of attention or he likes these like weird, obscure movies that no one else likes. And he's talking about him as if everyone else is talking about him. And he just like, and then there's even the thing where they have, I'm forgetting the guy's name. He's the Mandalorian. Forgetting his name. Mandalorian. Well, anyway.
Yeah. That's all I know him as, really. I know him in movies, but yeah.
Pedro Pascal.
There we go.
Pedro Pascal. Even he is like the drug lord. You're just kind of like, I shouldn't feel bad for you because you're like a cartel guy, but you seem like just a very soft-spoken, shy guy who's just really into movies and you're in the wrong place and time. And it plays with your emotions because you're just like, I like him, but I shouldn't because I know what he's doing. I know what he's capable of. And then as it goes on, like you realize, oh, no, he is a nice guy. He was born into this life and he has been kind of forced into the role and he never wanted to be this role. He doesn't even call the shots. The other guy. So it does do the thing where it kind of takes all the burden off him and makes it easy to like him. But there's just a lot of those scenes where you're just like, what's your favorite? I don't remember what the first two movies were. It was like some obscure movie that like they both liked. And then it was like a Nick Cage movie. He says, what's your third movie? He's like, I just see he's bringing on the bush. Like, what? Just tell me what the fuck your third movie is. It's like, Paddington 2. He says, shut the fuck up. Paddington 2. Like, no. And they're watching it and they're crying. Like, Paddington 2 is fucking beautiful. Like, I still haven't seen it, but that's what I hear a lot of people say. It's a really good movie. So it was this movie where like, it worked on the aspects of like a weird, fucked up dark comedy, and then it worked on the aspects of an actual action movie. Because by the end, they're talking about like, I think I want it to be like something artsy, but then we trick the audience, so we make it an action movie near the end because he's trying to make it fit with the FBI thing. He's like, why would we do that? I just think, and then is the movie just coincidentally enough that any movie about screenplay writing or making film usually reflects in some way, like in Seven Psychopaths. We'll get back to that, and I just found that to be a really fun movie. I was just really enjoying it the whole way through. It was a vastly different movie. And Nick Cage made it on the list 2 times in the last 2 years just because he keeps trying these weird experimental films like this. And the thing is, it is kind of experimental, but it also has like a little bit of that kind of like big budget pop that I think something like this needs,
Well, it's one of those ones like because Nick Cage really hasn't been on like the big screen cinemas in a while. All his movies have kind of been straight to video and so on. So I feel that was a big deal for him to kind of come back 2 screens and kind of come in this kind of comedy one that, there's other movies out there that are like this in this style. I mean, Seven Psychopaths for the screenwriting way that like the way that they write the screenplay. And as it goes on in time, the movie kind of plays out like that too. And then also there's other movies too, where there's like those kind of actor ones. Like there's one I can always think of off the top of my head. There's like My Name is Bruce, where Bruce Bruce Campbell plays himself as a wash-up actor guy, and there's a monster that comes to town in Oregon or whatever, and this one super fan guy's like, well, Bruce Campbell can save it. He's good at fighting monsters. That's what he does. So he drags him in there, and it's kind of got that sort of aspect to it. And I think there's a movie like way back in the day, because I remember Bruce Campbell mentioning it too, like there's another movie that's like one of those like old timey movies that has like a guy who's playing himself. It was like the first time that someone ever kind of did that, But I just thought that the Nick Cage one, it's a fun one. It's funny. It's got a cool story the way through it. I just love how it's just like this great buddy one where they just like, it's almost like this one where like Nick Cage has been looking for a good friend to talk movies and kind of like, do the same things he likes, where he feels like he's been falling out of the loop, and he finds it in this drug lord guy from Spain,
No, I just really liked it, and I liked their relationship, and then at the end he has the option to go out and do all the movie stuff, but instead he just goes home with his family at the end. So it has that kind of, it has that Hollywood kind of feel good ending. But for that kind of movie, I think it worked, because it was this movie that was all about kind of struggling with, do I want to be artsy, or do I want to be like a big crowd pleasing movie? But I think it kind of walks, just the concept alone kind of, I think, is a very kind of weird artsy kind of choice. Like, yeah, Nick Cage playing himself, but it's going to be a critique on himself. And the idea that they get the two guns is like, it's the suit. It's the suit and the actual guns from Face Off, He has that whole memorabilia room.
Yeah, I just like how there's a bunch of like random stuff in there too, like even things from movies you wouldn't really expect, and I think that's what makes it kind of cool. So as like a Nick Cage fan, it's like definitely the ultimate piece.
Yeah. So I guess that leads us on to your number 4.
So we go to my number 4. And my number 4 is The Batman. That's my number 4.
The Batman.
The Batman, because you know what? Batman's always got to be on the list no matter what. It's somewhere. Batman prefers to be at the top, but Batman can't always be at the top sometimes, I guess. But this Batman's one of those ones that like, it's one of those movies where like, it does a lot of stuff in it that I really do enjoy. There's some stuff that I feel like I wish could kind of almost go just sometimes there's that one where you always wish, can't we just go a little bit farther instead of doing baby steps? But whatever, it's just, sometimes it just takes us there. My favorite thing about it though is I love that this movie actually full on kind of focuses more on Batman doing his detective thing. He comes out like in Batman year 2, so we don't have to go on the old origin story and all that. He's already been doing it, but he's still kind of fresh. It's got a handful of characters in it, top it off, even though we're not really getting new stuff. We're definitely getting kind of, classic characters kind of reused again in new forms, which is still cool. Don't get me wrong. But like, it still is just a solid movie. And but this one hits like that 3-hour mark too, I want to say almost, or just about like 2 hours,
2 hours
and 50
and
minutes.
55 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is also something to the effect of like, I'm just going to skip ahead here because this is actually my number 3. So we can go directly to your number 3 after this, because The Batman is my number 3. And the thing with The Batman is it like any real complaint I have about the movie, I can say like Bruce Wayne's a little bitchy in some points, but at the same time, he's meant to be like in his mid-20s and whatnot. And he has that learning curve. Like, I don't like the way he treats Alfred in a few scenes. Like,
yeah, he's very angry emo kid, and like Alfred's like playing the father figure to like this emo kid who's like 28 years old or 32 years old or whatever the hell he is.
Yeah,
I thought it was a phase when he was 15 years old. It's not a phase.
Bruce, put down the used albums.
The used is life, Alfred. You would never understand.
And if you're going to play the Nirvana Unplugged album, they have more songs than Something in the Way. I'm just going to say. But
I don't know why. I know that like that's supposed to be like the theme, but whenever you play the song twice in a movie, to me it feels more like, well, you couldn't buy a fucking second one. The guy's fucking dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, Jesus. Like, there's more songs on that album. Like, if you want it to be a theme, give him the theme of Nirvana, but don't give him just the theme of like one song you're gonna play like twice. I don't know why. That always feels cheap in a movie, unless it's like a song written for the character, like the Superman or Batman theme. That's different.
Well, who knows? Maybe the next one. I wonder if, I don't know. I doubt they'll use the same song for the next one. I wonder if it's going to be like Nirvana.
In the way.
I really like that song, but at the same time,
but like it is one of those ones.
Well, something about it, it's like, because don't get me wrong, I think, in all honesty, my two favorite Batman movies, two live action favorite Batman movies, or that are on par with each other, is Begins and Dark Knight. I know everyone opts for Dark Knight, but I think Begins does some things better, and I think Dark Knight does some things better. And those two are on par for me. This one, I can honestly say, I think it's probably like more well made, and probably it's even smarter than those two movies. However, I just didn't have, I guess, as much of emotional resonance with it. It's like, this is your number 4 and your number 3. You guys are still bitching about it. But I mean, like, I'm just talking about it in the way of like,
yeah, I know. Things fucking farther up the list, and that's how I feel. It's like I really like it, but there's just things in it that are just like, God, you know what? Can we just go with that next step finally? We're making progress. Don't get me wrong. We are making progress at everyone, but
I guess I felt more of an emotional connection to the Batman and to Christopher Nolan's iteration of Batman in Begins and Dark Knight. Maybe because we saw him as a child and we saw the parents die. We don't need to see it again. We know what happens. But I just felt like, and plus that was the first time we saw Batman in a while. And it felt so grand and epic. And now we see Batman every 2 to 4 years. So I maybe that's why. Maybe it's a little bit of fatigue. But even with fatigue, I still felt this to be like one of the best Batman movies made. And my only real complaint, but that's a minor complaint. That's a really small complaint because I'm able to fill in the gaps and figure out what's there. I guess my other minor, it's like story-wise, I have no real big complaints with this movie. I think it's really, it does not feel like nearly a 3-hour movie. I feel like this movie, it's a longer movie than Dark Knight Rises, but it feels shorter to me. You know, It doesn't feel like, because even though I like Dark Knight Rises, it kind of drags. This one does not drag.
No double rise.
Yeah, no double rise. It's all nothing but rising, you know? So the only thing, I guess it's small things like, because even though we said this when we first saw the movie, it's trying to be very grounded, but then it's also trying to be like very accurate to the comic, even more so than Begins or Dark Knight, to the level of like, he's like walking around, maybe just a few transitional scenes, I don't know, but there's a few scenes where he's walking around like in a hoodie and a baseball cap, and then it's like crime shit's going on. Time for me to go run into a bathroom stall and change, you know? And it's just like, I feel like Batman's already prowling the roof and like, or like the grappling hook. I think like he's already crawling around the city with the grappling hook, doing that kind of shit, where this one, it felt more like the grappling hook is a tool for certain hairy situations. That's a very small complaint, That's not even a complaint for the movie. That's more just personal preferences. So that said, I still think this is probably one of the best Batman movies ever made. And I really look forward to where the franchise goes.
Yeah, and I'm with you exactly on that too. It's like I still really did enjoy it overall. I mean, it's on my list at number 4, of course. You know, I mean, my small complaint is always like, why the hell does Catwoman not get a mask at some point? She has to wear that stupid beanie. It looked like if this movie was like, you know, a shoestring budget, like independent film, I would be like, fine, that's okay. That's what you made for your high school Batman movie. That's okay. You got creative. But like in a full on, we got money to blow, like we're Warner Brothers, fuck you money. And you can't get her at least a mask. I'm fine with that mask in the beginning. That's fine. But like shit, like Bruce Wayne should be like, you gotta put something better on that. Here, I had this custom made. I got a guy. You know, don't worry about it. You know what? Here's the thing. I'm not going anywhere if you don't put on a real mask. If you're gonna wear that half, you know, beanie that some fucking cameraman just cut up, yeah, I'm looking at you. Yeah. Walk away. Who's the one the fucking Batman suit? Boy, this movie went over fucking Woody Allen for a second. Like, Batman's now just fucking talking to like the guys backstage.
It's just like Matt Reeves, like, Rob, that's not in the script. Like, I'm just saying something. Why yell at the camera guy? You can talk to me. You can talk to the prop guy. Why yell at the camera guy? Because he's seen it the whole time. His eyes behind the camera. He knows what's happening. But he's the camera guy.
He's fucking wearing that beanie. God damn it! He's just walking around with a beanie on the lawn. Fucking look at me.
This is making that like Christian Bale like freak out, like look like nothing.
Yeah,
Let me
just
see
that
the fucking he just takes his beanie off, just like puts it on his cowl that goes right to the ears. Oh, I'm sorry, did I break it? Is there ribs now? Oh, look, there's eyes now. Isn't that nice? There's fucking eyes. Fuck you. And then he comes out later like, I'm sorry, I ripped apart that cameraman's beanie. I was working through. I was in character.
Yeah, one of those moments. But I know it's a small complaint, but I can't help it. Every single time I sit there watching him, I'm like, just like, fuck you, Warner Brothers. You got money. Get her that fucking mask. Because the rest of her suit looks fine. I like everything else about it. I like Jim Gordon a lot in this one. I love how Jim Gordon's like the buddy pal. He works with him. Like, that's how it should be. I always kind of hate when Jim Gordon's like, they make him go like, oh, I don't trust this Batman. I'm like, no, it's Jim Gordon. Everybody else doesn't have to trust Batman, but I like it when Jim and him are fucking like slapping high fives, like down low and shit, as they're solving crimes and having all that. And then the only other thing that was like, it's such a small one too, but it's like, I feel like towards the end, I do wish there was something more that Batman could have fought instead of fucking Riddler's like fucking Twitch followers that like, hey guys, when you go out to Cabela's later on and get yourself some sneaking suits and, get some guns and Jimmy, don't bring that fucking fishing pole again. I don't know what you were thinking, but that's not going to solve anything when we try to like hold this place hostage. I know you like fishing a lot and I know that says it in your profile, but like, because there's just like that part where it's just like, I feel like I don't think that there's anything like that's fine with the Riddler's character and all that kind of stuff there, but I just feel like it's just literally Batman's going like, well, there's no fucking Stroll. He just beat up a bunch of fucking nerds. Like, you know what I mean? Like, shit, Batman can do it with his eyes closed and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, can he have somebody like to actually fight for like our grand finale? You know what I mean? Like something.
I get you. I guess that didn't bother me just because the action scene itself was pretty badass. And by that point, there was no Bane or no like Killer Croc established or anything like that.
Yeah.
I do hope as this franchise goes on, like, because he takes a shot of Venom at the end. So I'm hoping they incorporate, and hopefully like half the city is still submerged in the next one. So we start
I think it's doing that good old no man's land thing.
So hopefully we get more of kind of like, I know Bane wasn't that far off, but maybe a more comic accurate version of Bane. Like I don't expect him to become like Hulk big, but like maybe something more. Tom Hardy's a good actor, but maybe something more accurate than Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
And then make something else. Somebody else. Maybe the city could also be divided among different like villains, kind of like it was in No Man's Land,
Yeah, I heard what you were saying at least and so on. And I think hopefully that would be the nice thing is to see the next Batman movies. I think we'll get super dialed in. I think this one's a great first start for anything. I mean, as I said, like as a Batman fan, I know you could always kind of go, hey, I wish this and this was a little bit more, but I think the overall picture is great. And I think leading into a No Man's Land story will be awesome. I just hope to see some new Batman characters we've never seen in movies before. That's my biggest hope.
Yeah. So that's your number 4 and my number 3. So what's your number 3?
So my number 3 is Prey, the new Predator movie.
That movie was badass. That would have been on my list, but then I'm like, Spencer's going to talk about it, so I'll leave it to him.
Well, that movie was like, I really thought that when I watched that, I'm like, this movie is probably literally the best Predator movie since like it's literally just as good as Predator 1. It's like the only thing that like it kind of separates it sort of is this fact it just doesn't have Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura and Bill Duke and Carl Weathers and all like that in it, of course. But like I think action-wise, story-wise, I love that. Like, I really wished I didn't learn this till after the first time I watched it, but was that you could watch the movie in Comanche full on. I'm like, that should have been the normal way this movie came out. I know that you can't sell that to like everybody out there, but I think watching it with subtitles, pure in there, take you right into the zone of being, hey, it's the 1700s. Here's these Native Americans. This predator comes down. He's fighting off bears and all kinds of wild animals, like testing his might against like, in a sense, the earth. And they kind of get brought up into this as just such a cool concept. Just like it's like old school, primal, almost man versus nature type movie that you just don't get very often.
No, it was a badass movie. And it was kind of like, because every so often, like they try to do that thing where like we're taking Predator back to the roots, or they try to do the thing where they massively reinvent the character. And sometimes both fall flat. I enjoy Predator 2, but I see a lot of flaws in it still, even though I enjoy it. But I really like Predators.
Yes, I'm with you on that one there too. I mean, I like Predator 2 is very nostalgic for me, and I just like it a lot, and I love Danny Glover. But Predator 3, I think Predators is amazing movie. Like literally, that one's right up there too. I think that was a hard one when I first watched this. Like, what do I like more? Do I like Prey or do I like Predators?
I think I like Prey more, but Predators I really like that one as far as the Predator movies go. And then I thought we were going to get the greatest one ever when we heard, what's his name?
Shane Black coming back.
Shane Black coming back, and he made like this wacky action comedy that I'm sure if you watch it again, there's deeper things going on, other layers, because Shane Black likes that. But at the same time, the movie felt off balance and all over the place, and the Predator is like talking to translator like, I want to fight your greatest warrior, bring him to me. You're like, oh, okay, we're doing this GI Joe shit now. So like, yeah, but like,
you know what the weird thing was is when Prey came out, you could watch every Predator movie except for the Predator 4. You could literally watch all the Alien versus Predator. For some reason, Hulu is like, you know what? Here at Fox, we're gonna hold off for a second on that one. I don't know why, because that was the one I wanted to watch again. Because I'm like, I haven't seen that one since theaters, and I kind of want to give it a second watch and see if there's something I was missing. I didn't dislike it, but it was one of those ones I was very kind of like, oh. This is maybe like that one too. My hopes were really high and everything like that. Shane Black, all that good stuff. And it's just like, boy. But then it's like Prey comes out and you're like, oh, this is Predator back in action. It's just a bummer that movie didn't come to theaters. That was the biggest issue.
Well, it was also something to the effect of like Predators, because like the Predator or whatever, the Shane Black one. It was all right. I wouldn't say I even liked it. I was like, it's all right. I might need to watch it again.
Yeah.
But I think I prefer Prey over Predators just because it is kind of back to basics, but it's back to basics in the right way. It's not as simple as a remake. Things are different enough, but it's all the elements that make Predator good. It also still expands upon some things. And it also just brings in this aspect of like, okay, well, we've seen what Predator's like fighting dudes with guns and, like hired killers. What's Predator like fighting just like a hunter with like a tomahawk and, seeing them try to outsmart, like how do they outsmart a Predator, And I was just really into that, and the whole thing of like, I heard some people complaining that it's like a small petite girl that brings down the Predator. But like, well, that's not the point. The point is it's a matter of like outsmarting him, not out like if it was like a slugfest, then like yeah, I'd be there with you. But
yeah, it's not like they're having an arm wrestling competition, and fucking Stallone's over there like over the top, not like one of those moments.
Exactly, and it was this whole thing but like pushing pencils make you weaker, that whole thing. No, yeah, it's like this is like it's if Arnold could just outstrength the Predator in the first one, then it would have been game over. He had
not even Arnold. He had to outsmart the Predator. He doesn't win by might. He literally wins by like skill and intelligence. And that's the same way I think that works in this one. Is she literally like the way that she goes through the movie? It's such a good way of her building and learning. And she gets trapped in certain situations, and she has to get her way out. She has to figure out a way. And even like all like the guys that hang out in like a hunting club or whatever, like. They always kind of like, oh, did you bring her around the skirt again? Just like one of those ones, like, oh, I don't want this chick to get around. Like, what if we want to slap dicks together? We can't have her stand there looking at us. You think we're gay or some shit. Dude, you are gay. No, I just like the feel of a man's dick on another man's dick. There's nothing gay about that.
It's like the feel of a dick slapping against my thigh that's not my own. That's all.
Yeah, so it's like, once like those guys kind of go, and it's just like, I just like how she does go. She goes through all these trials and tribulations of getting better and getting more skills and all that stuff. And it has a perfect buildup of how she even invents and so on along the way that I felt like I totally believed it. I thought the character was awesome. I thought that was one of the coolest like Predator characters. I was just so sold on that.
No, it was just a really badass movie, and I really liked it. That was one of those movies that it would have been like so many good movies came out this year. And I knew that you were going to cover it, and I knew that you're probably going to cover Batman. So, but at the same time, there's some of those movies that I just like, I got to get this on my list just because I like this movie so much. And Predators very well, or Prey very well could have been on my list. It very well could have been, but I just felt like, I'm like, you'll cover it, so here we are.
Yeah. I literally think that movie's
movie.
like a perfect movie. Like, I got nothing to complain about. As I said, my only complaint was that I wish that movie was in theaters. I think that, like, it's good when, like, I guess people can just easily stream it. At least it's on Hulu. It's on some random ass something. I feel like as long as you're on Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon, or HBO, maybe, those are kind of like the 4 big ones. When you're on something else, then I feel like you're off in like the fucking wilderness. But I wish the one that I thought was like, man, this movie would be so cool in the theaters. And I know that they kind of they're sort of afraid that the Predator's just not going to make money. So they kind of, I think they even sort of hide the title. Like, because if you weren't in the know, this movie, you don't even know it's a Predator movie. It just says Prey on it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're flipping through your Hulu thing, you're just like, what's this Prey thing? You know what I mean? It's like there's clues on there, but nothing that the average person's gonna find.
Yeah. I think they're also trying to get it to make it so someone doesn't immediately know it's Predator. Then as they see, like, oh, okay,
Yeah. But yeah. But yeah, fantastic flick, and that's my number 3. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a movie called Vengeance.
What the heck is this one? I don't even know if I have.
So this movie, I think it got a minimal release, and I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. But when I was before I took off from the States, my parents actually have Peacock, and it was on there. So I'm like, oh, this is a movie I heard about. Well, anyway, it's this dark crime comedy about, like, he's this BJ Novak. He's I'm trying to think. He's in a bunch of stuff. But I'm trying to blank on some. He's like one of the Inglorious Bastards, but he's not a big one. He's like one of the ones that's kind of there on the side. He's actually the guy who's with, I think he helps Eli Roth kill like some of the guys in the movie theater, but I don't think he's the guy. You know what I mean? He's in the troops. He's one of the bastards.
Inglorious Bastards, yeah.
He's one of them, yeah. So anyway, he's this very pompous, very poshy, like, pseudo-intellectual writer who wants to get a podcast going for like kind of an NPR style company in New York. Mm-hmm. And he's just very shallow. He thinks he's very deep and intellectual, but he's just, into hookups and all that, and he's having trouble getting this podcast going. And then one night he's just trying to find a concept for a podcast that he can't seem to pitch. And then I think he writes for like the New Yorker or something like that. And then one night he gets a text or gets a call from like a girl from like he gets a call from the brother of a girl he hooked up with who died. And he's like, I'm so sorry. But they're under the impression that it was a deep, serious, long-term relationship. But it was just a couple of hookups they had. Like, she's dead, man. We know how much she meant to you. Like, oh, right. He's like looking through his phone, like, right. Well, she was so, yeah, He's like, okay, well, where's the funeral at? Like, Texas. He's like, oh. he's like some yuppie New York guy. He's like, Texas. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So he basically kind of gets his arm twisted into going to Texas to go to this funeral, and it's just one of those weird, like, situation gets worse the more he's there, like, just awkwardly gets pushed, egged on and on and on. It's very much that city guy going into like, hello country folk, hello y'all, that kind of thing. Yeah. And he gets there like, okay, and she's dead now, and because he was, keep in mind, someone he only hooked up with like 2 or 3 times. It's like, she's dead now, but luckily the love of her life is here to say a few words. Like, at the funeral, it's like, she's a song in all our hearts. Like, she loved music. Like, yeah, she did. So then he talks to the family, and they believe that she was murdered. That there's some deeper murder conspiracy happening here. Mm-hmm. And then out of that, he's like, "This is a good concept for a podcast." It's like they think, they going off no proof, but they think there is a murder here. So he asked him if we can do, like, we're going to investigate, but do you mind if we do this for a podcast as well? So they start going on interviewing and all that kind of stuff. And as they start to interview and start to go around, certain dots start to connect, and there might be something there to actually her being murdered, but also might be coincidence. It kind of goes back and forth between that balance. And ultimately the movie comes across as like, you can be, because it's obviously a very left-wing guy from very upper class part of New York who's very like full of himself, and a bunch of right-wing people who are very humble but are very like, maybe you wouldn't agree with them politically, but they're very nice people who are a little bit more people. And it kind of goes on this aspect of like, right versus left kind of, but then at the same time, like, well, you can act like you have all the answers, but are at the end of the day, can you say you're as good of a person as these people over here? Can you say you're as good a person as that? Something to that effect. You could say you know all this pseudo intellectual shit, but are you actually a good person? And then it also goes something deeper, like maybe some people on the left can learn some stuff from people on the right, and vice versa. Kind of comes into that. But then there's also other aspects, like a character that really stole the show. And this is somebody who I've never really been a fan of other than that 70s show. But Ashton Kutcher plays like this really philosophical, like record producer out there in this like, little like podunk town. And he like steals the show. And I've never been a big fan of Ashton Kutcher. And maybe not since Kelso or Dude, Where's My Car? Because I guess whenever he tries to play a serious character, I just can't take him seriously. Or I don't know, he's always playing the hot guy or whatever in a romantic comedy or something. I'm just like, okay, whatever. This movie, though, he fucking just knocks it out of the park. And he is so good in this film. And as the film goes on, it gets a little bit darker, and it goes in directions you wouldn't totally expect it to go from the way it starts off. So I really enjoyed this movie, and I really recommend it. Vengeance.
Hey, I remember you telling me about this one, a couple of months back, and I was like, oh yeah, this does sound really good and interesting and someone like that. And this one just come out on like Peacock. Is that where it like premiered at?
I don't know if it premiered there, but I just want to say there's this one funny part where he goes to like a rodeo, and there's some people out there like, who's a fan of Texas University? Like, woo! Like, he just jumps up and says, woo! Like, he's quiet and no one stands. Like, who's a fan of Texas Tech? Everyone else stands up. Like, ah! Like, all right, guy who called out for Texas University. Why you like them so much? It's like, oh, I don't know. They're a state school. They have a real good, like, I like their curriculum. They had the guy who made, I forgot his name, but the guy who made Slackers got his start there, so this and
Richard
that.
Linklater.
Yeah, Richard Linklater. He's like, Richard Linklater got his start there, I just think like, well, they said like, they bring up somebody else like, why do you like Texas Tech? And he says the name of some football player. Like, he's just like,
that's all it needs to be.
He's like, oh, so what else do you like about Tech? Well, I heard Texas and I wanted to blend in, so I just cheered first thing, He's like, what do you do? He's just like, I'm a writer. Like, oh, you ride? Like, oh no, I'm a writer. You ride? Like, I'm a writer. Like when you buy a newspaper, I'm the guy who writes. I know what a newspaper is, you fucking asshole.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to check that one out. That sounds like fun the whole way through.
So it is kind of, I'm going to be honest, it is a slow burn. It's not like nonstop laugh, but it is kind of a lot of awkward, kind of like pause, kind of humor, and you get a couple of those big ones like that. But it's really good regardless.
Yeah, well, sometimes some of the best jokes come from when there's time for it to breathe in between, Yeah. But okay, that was your number 2, right?
Yep.
So my number 2 is Sonic 2, and my main reason for it being up so high on the list is I feel this is one of those movies that I could definitely probably watch the majority of the time more than anything else. This almost feels like a movie you could just throw on. It's always good. They hit all the marks right. I know it's like this is more like high praise for Sonic and Sega nostalgia. As I said, if you're not going to be into Sonic, it's definitely, you'll be like, what the heck? But still, this is one of those movies that like the experience itself of watching it was one of those like just mind-blowing, awesome, hell yeah, like what the fuck are you doing today kind of things, like, because this is where you should be at, and that's how much I kind of liked it.
Yeah, once again, it hit on everything. If you could say, like, let's have a Sonic movie, there's the fan script in my head that all takes place on Mobius, but for something realistic, this goes like of what a Hollywood studio would produce. It goes beyond that. It goes more than what you'd expect it to. And yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 really, like I could probably watch that more than a couple of the other movies I have higher than it. But it's just just movie wise, I don't think it's as well as made as those other movies, but I could probably watch it more though. And it's just a really fun, enjoyable film. And it really hits all those nostalgia buttons.
Yeah, that fun factor is just so high. But to keep it rolling, what's your number one?
My number one is Nope.
Nope, your number one. I was kind of wondering because I was just waiting for that one to come. I'm like, I know that's probably gonna be on Ryan's list because he was the one who told me about the movie. So then I know that's gonna be there. And that would make sense for one like that because it is a pretty good movie. As I said, I was distracted by that. I know I said I was distracted by the chimpanzee thing, but you won't believe how distracted I was. Like in my mind, when I saw that chimpanzee scene, I know I keep repeating the chimpanzee. Like, geez, this guy shut up about the fucking chimpanzee scene. But it was like, I kid you not, like the rest of the movie stopped, and I almost like it was, like when they played the fucking Batman like trailer during I can't remember what movie it was, but for like 20
Sherlock
minutes.
Holmes 2.
Yeah, it was hard to pay attention to the movie because you were just thinking about the Batman trailer that first premiered. Well, that's how I felt when I saw that chimpanzee thing. In my mind, just started racing. Like, dude, I was just thinking, like, dude, this could be a movie right here in itself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you'd have an entire full film. And, there is just so much kind of cool stuff in that one. And I do feel that the more you watch Nope, I've only watched it once, but I bet you if you watch it a couple more times, you'll see more little things in there that will stand out even more. You didn't catch the first time around.
Yeah, I noticed a few more things a couple times around like that. And yeah, I really liked that movie. I really liked it hit on all the creepy factors, it hit all the funny factors, and even just kind of like Jordan Peele said, like it's literally meant to be kind of like the monster. It's kind of like the mouth of the monster is made to be like look like an old school camera, like an old like timey camera. It's meant to be how the system has a tendency to chew people up and spit them out. And I think the movie is it's a metaphor, but at the same time it hits so many other things in a lot of other ways. And I just really enjoyed that movie. And then how at the end it kind of became a Western for a second.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that movie, and it is a good one. Well, and then I guess moving up our list, we go to my number one, which is one different than all the ones on the list. But my number one is The Northman, which to me, this is how I've been defining this movie ever since I saw it day one when it came out. As I call it, it's the Passion of the Christ for people of Norse. And that's just one of those ones, like when I saw this movie, it was like a religious experience. You come out of that theater, just like everything about it, so amazing. Literally, there was a dude that met me in the fucking shopping mart, like not even next to the theater, but just later on. And he's like, you were in The Northman. What did you think? You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a magical experience. And I was like, well, yes, it was a magical experience. And we kind of had this weird, like 5-minute conversation of people who didn't know each other, but for some reason he just recognized me from the cinema, and that's how magical it was, because that's the thing is the movie's fantastic. Like, and it's another one of those movies that you can't just show to anybody. It's so Norse that it's going to scare the average person away. You know what I mean? It's like, because they just don't get to do movies like this very often, where they actually get to go full Norse and have that full kind of Viking feel, like not just like funny, what the fuck's the Ride the Dragons, like Viking stuff. Not saying that those cartoon movies aren't bad, but the fuck are those ones called? They're made by, there's like 4 of them or something like that.
The what dragon? I don't know. The How to Train Your Dragon?
Yeah, How to Train Your Dragon. Let's say, you're the one that showed me it or whatever, but like,
not all. Like, I happen to have the first one. I just like, we gotta watch all 5 of them.
well, that's the thing. I felt like I remember seeing like the 3rd or 4th one in theaters, and I remember everybody else was sitting there like fucking crying. I'm like, I didn't see the in between ones. I feel like I don't have the same connection here. Like you know what I mean? Like when you just don't have that built up like team going there. But you know what I mean? Like that's the thing, is that's like how people Norse is kind of a weird one that people don't have, like, or it's like Thor. They make him out like the joke character and so on like this. Like when I watch The Norseman, I'm like, this is how the Thor movie should have been the whole time, is taken straight, been kind of a little bit more darker and more serious. The Northman delivers on all fronts. This movie is just like, not only is it amazing as like an action movie, as like kind of like, not necessarily as I guess you say historical, but more like a historical mythology-ish kind of film. But it still is grounded, yet it still has almost like a light bit of magic, but not magic enough to say that there's magic. You know what I mean? Like it's just there kind of in more like in knowledge and speaking. And just to kind of interweave this story that's kind of dark and brutal and cold, but still like so much stuff is kind of going on in here and showing it. It's amazing experience.
I think my favorite thing is how William Dafoe, I got a feeling when William Dafoe came in, he's like, oh, like he shows up like in a loincloth and like a skull on his head or whatever. And that's just how he showed up that day. Like he thought he was stepping on a different set. Like, oh, William, you want to be this? Like, why not? And then like he's just like, you must become a wolf. You must become a beast, you. And like, Ethan Hawke, like or whatever, like burps. He says, you boy. And he just like farts like it smells like man time.
Like, yeah, that scene almost reminded me, like, it was almost like something out of, like, the fucking Doors movie or something there.
Well, it feels like because I liked that movie, and that movie could have been on my. I didn't like it as much as you, clearly, because I guess I don't have that connection to Norse mythology. But at the same time, I did like it, and that could have probably been very much on my the lower half of my list for me personally. But there's that whole part where like I kind of appreciated how like brutal the movie was, and how it's like everybody's a fucking asshole. Like maybe Anya Taylor-Joy is the only person who's not a fucking asshole. Like even at the beginning, he's just like, we're gonna go and we're gonna murder this whole fucking town. Why? And he's just like, there might be a link, and I'm gonna sacrifice this victory. I'm gonna cut my hair short, and I'm just gonna do some Metal Gear Solid sneaking around shit for a little while.
Yeah, I'm gonna go full slave and just kind of like work my way into here and so on. It just has that epic tale of like you got thrown out of your own village and you gotta come on back and kick some ass. Well, and you can't trust your mom. Keep that in mind. You don't know this yet, but keep that in mind.
Well, the idea of like the mom, just like, hey, look, you got two choices, son. You can die or we can fuck. Like those are the only two. There's no middle ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so that's one of those things. Like, well, I guess killing Nicole Kidman got that much easier, but at the same time,
you long bros, like.
Well, then at the same time, there's even the part where they're like playing that game, and I kind of like it's like, okay, it's an opposing kingdom. They have their guys, we have our guys. We can play this little game, and the little kid's like, "That's not how it's supposed to go!" And he just runs out there. The one guy just big boots the kid. I'm just like,
yeah, they're fucking high stakes, like fucking Norse chess, real people.
And then like right there, then he's like that he saves that kid, but then later he's just like that same kid. He's just like, fuck this kid, because the kid like stabs him in the back or whatever. My favorite part of that movie though is the part where it's just like, you'll be granted like your own room and your own quarters, and once a month you'll get a woman. Keep in mind, you're not us. You'll not be one of us. And he's like the scrawny little like prince, like his cousin who's a way scrawnier. You can tell never lifted a weight in his life or whatever. He's just like, oh, we'll see, motherfucker. And he's just like stabbing that guy. Did he like stick a knife down his throat or something like that?
I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like
there's great death scenes throughout and so on, and like when people get their comeuppance, they get it.
Well, there's even the part like because they'll take a hit of something, and it's like, oh, so this is like the psychedelics. So they imagine the Valkyries, they imagine fighting a frost giant. Mm-hmm. That's where all that shit comes into. But there's still kind of like hints of it sort of being there to some extent,
Yeah, that's what I like about it. It's like there's no real like magic or fantasy in there, but there's just like an element that would kind of show you like how that could have been or how you could have seen that. And I think that was kind of cool. So it plays it very actually realistic and grounded, but like in a good way.
Mm-hmm. But also there's like something, they have like senses, like, okay, there is like some kind of weird spiritual bond that people have and some kind of like third sense or psychic sense they have. But it's never to the degree of like summoning a dragon or like a cow or like a massive world cow or snake or something like that.
Yeah, one of those cows that licks the ground and people come out.
Yeah, not that. Something to the degree of like, oh, okay, it's there's something there, but we don't know to the extent. But here, sip this shit William Dafoe brought with him, and then you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that movie overall it's just such a magical experience, and there's just so much good times in there, and like I don't know, like even just the ending battle is just so epic, and like the comedic part of it, and just like the location they're fighting and everything like that, like it's so cool.
At the end.
Which one?
The part where they have the silhouette where you see like after the slap, kind of like the anime thing. Like one of them got like,
and they're like in like the volcano-ish area and so on, and
and like one dude like I think the main guy got stabs, and then it put an angle where he got stabbed and staggered back. The other guy staggered back, and his head just falls off or something like that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it was. It's been kind of a while since I've seen it, but I think that's exactly how it was. But yeah, that movie's so good. And I mean, geez, our list here is just filled with a crap ton of movies that, you know, you can go see, and nice old long podcast full of all sorts of fun. I know it's like our lists, like they don't overlap as much anymore. So like that makes our podcast even longer. See, that's why we cannot have anybody else on here, because there is no time to have anybody else.
Oh, I'd like
God
to have
forbid we see somebody else bring somebody else's list and they have 10 completely different movies too.
Sometimes people ask to come on, and I'd love to have them on, but it's just like, all right, we got to strap in for the long haul of it. I think we had one other. There may have been one where we had Marley on, maybe.
We had Marley on, like it was like many years ago, and we did. Yeah. But I almost felt like I told someone, I'm like, the only way we could probably do it is if we had 5 movies each, because there's no way we'd be able to get. We'd be here for like 4 hours with somebody else, you know, unless we had more overlapping.
It's almost 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, it's already, but yeah. Tons of great movies out there, even though ironically it was actually a weak year as far as like there was a bunch of good movies in theaters, but there wasn't a whole lot of movies in theaters in like a weird way. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the bizarre one of this one is that like it's like in December time, it's like there was like 5 movies that played, you know, and half those movies carried over from like November, you know, so it's like you can't really even say they're like December films. Yeah,
there's a lot of I mean, I think there's a lot of good movies that came out this year. I found myself trimming some stuff. And before we go, I know we've been going on.
Well, I'm saying good movies. I'm saying cinema movies.
Gotcha. Here's just a couple of movies I wanted to see, but just was not able to, given either time or just regional things. Like, not everything came here just due to rights or whatever. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
You know, I watched that one, and that was one of those movies that, like, I thought I was like, okay, this movie looks really cool. I like Michelle Yeoh, but I will say that was one of those ones that's like, it was enjoyable and interesting, but it was definitely not like, it didn't cut the top 10. Like I felt like it was definitely a movie. It was kind of like an Inception. That was the best way to sort of say it, except for I like Inception more. But like where like it was trying to be this ridiculously overly like convoluted movie that was actually more simple than like people really thought. But I knew that was supposed to be the Chinese version of blowing the average person's mind. But like at the end of the day, it was kind of simple. I mean, it's still good. Still had action and all kinds of stuff. I'm not saying I did, but like I almost was hoping it was going to be even more exciting than it was, because it sounded like it should have been like super awesome.
So there's that one, Barbarian, which is like a horror film that's actually by one of the guys. I didn't know this till they were interviewed by Double Toasted, but one of the members of Whitest Kids You Know actually made that movie, which I didn't know about. So one of the guys from Whitest Kids You Know. 3,000 Years of Longing, which is a George Miller movie, which got by me.
Really? Well, it didn't come to theater. That's the downfall. Is they don't come to theaters. It's just like they just kind of go into like the abyss.
Babylon, which I already said I wish I saw. Marcel the Shell, which looked like a sweet, fun movie. This one initially not, but I heard nothing but good responses on it, and then I saw one of the more recent trailers. I'm like, that actually does look good. Don't judge. Puss in Boots 2, because everyone's talking about how good of a movie it is and how it's actually kind of like a Western. It's kind of meant to be
Antonio.
It's kind of meant to be like The Unforgiven, but with Puss in Boots to a certain extent. I mean, it's still a comedy, but it's apparently he's down because, you know, cats have 9 lives. He's down to his last life, and he's suddenly getting like this, I'm going to die one day kind of thing. But then he has like all these other bounty hunters coming after him. So I'm kind of like, all right, that sounds kind of interesting. So, and then there's one I wanted to see called, this is one that I kept on forgetting. I'm not even sure if I could watch it here, but it's called Mad God. Have you heard about that one?
No, I didn't hear about that one. That didn't come to theaters either. I know that for sure.
I think it went to like a festival or something. But yeah, Mad God is like he's once again like a stop motion veteran. And this is like a movie he's been working on for nearly 20 years. He's one of the guys who did a lot of work at Industrial Lights and Magic. He's one of like the AT-AT guys and does a lot of stuff in the Star Wars films. And then he also was one of the people, or the guy heading back when they almost did Jurassic Park, original Jurassic Park with
the
stop motion dinosaurs. He's the guy that worked on that. He was working on a movie for like the last 20, 25 years or something of a lone wanderer going through a post-apocalyptic industrial world, and it's all silent, but it's just this guy going through sections of just monsters destroying. I don't even know how much of a story it is. I've seen clips and it looks like straight up nightmare fuel. Just this guy trying to make his way through like this wasteland of like industrial like buildings of just monsters and creatures, and it's all stop motion, and it just looks awesome. Like. And I wanted to watch that, but I was having trouble finding it. So yeah, it's on Shudder apparently.
Oh, okay. I've had Shudder before, so yeah, that would have been actually pretty sweet to see. But yeah, there's just so much kind of stuff out there. It's just harder to find stuff in a weird way. We live in a world where it's like it's all there, but you got to go like hardcore like digging to find it and seeing where it's located at and breaching barriers or renting, and it's not just like showing up to the cinemas anymore. So
exactly.
But yeah, all kinds of good movies, fun stuff to check out. So enjoy our list. You can chime in on any ones that you think were pretty sweet ones of 2022. And till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Duggan.
And we'll see you some other time.
Later, folks.